Konx Pax by Aleister Crowley. Chapter 1. Dedication and Counter-Dedication. With a note on obscurity, when the neophyte enters upon the path of evil, there confronteth him the great angel Samael. In vain he saith that he is come from between the pillars, and seeketh the hidden knowledge in the name of Adonai. The angel answers him, I am the prince of darkness and of evil. The wicked and rebellious man gazeth upon the face of nature, and findeth therein naught but terror and obscurity. Unto him it is but the darkness of the darkness, and heights but as a drunken man groping in the dark. Return, for thou canst not pass by. Equally, when the neophyte enters upon the path of good, doth the great angel Metatron arrest him with the words, I am the angel of the presence divine. The wise man gazeth upon the material world, and he beholdeth therein the luminous image of the Creator. Notice yet canst thou bear the dazzling brilliance of that light. Return, for thou canst not pass by. These commonplaces of the bastard mysticism of mountebanks, crude and imbecile, as they seem to one who has passed by, are curiously apt to mine intention of the moment. S's in light, I hear somebody exclaim. This man was obscure enough before, but now, very like, 'tis the first time I have written careless of lucidity. By the usual paradox, I may expect some solemn fool to assert that nothing ever was so plain. And with little luck, the rest of the solemn fools brief all England to follow them, till Konx and Pax replace reading without tears in every infant school. Yet, suppose this were to happen, how would the world be advanced? In no wise. For the brilliance wherein we walk will be but thick darkness to all those who have not become so blind that light and darkness are akin. The light wherein I write is not the light of reason. It is the LVX of that which, first mastering and then transcending the reason, illumines all the darkness caused by the interference of the opposite waves of thought, not by destroying their balance and thereby showing a false and partial light, but by overleaping their limitations. Let not the pedant exclaim with Newman that I avoid the Scylla of AI and the Charybdis of Nay by the straits of no meaning. A thing is not necessarily not AI. It may be outside the universe of discourse, wherein A and not A exist. It is absurd to say of virtue either that it is green or not green, for virtue has nothing to do with color. It is one of the most suggestive definitions of Konx, del Vivex, of the Brethren of the Rosy Cross, that it transcends all the possible pairs of opposites, nor does this sound nonsensical to those who are acquainted with that of VX. But to those who do not, it must, I fear, remain as obscure and ridiculous as spherical trigonometry to the inhabitants of Flatland. Kant and others have remarked on the similarity of our hands and feet, and the impossibility of one replacing its fellow in ordinary three-dimensional space. This to them suggested a space in which they can be made to coincide. Similarly, a consistent equilibration of all imaginable opposites will suggest to us a world in which they are truly one, whence to that world itself is but the shortest step. All our contradictories are coordinate curves. They are on opposite sides of the axis, but otherwise are precisely similar, just as in the case of the hands quoted above. If they were not similar, they would no longer be contradictories, but contraries. People who begin to think for themselves usually fall into the error of contradicting normal ideas as taught by their seniors. Thus, one learns that marriage is right and adultery wrong. One thinks and finds the beauty of the latter, the sordidity of the former, perhaps ending with a little wit in defending marriage because the delights of adultery are impossible without it. This attitude is good enough indeed while one is talking to the grovelers, but what educates the clergy, since miracles still happen, is a truism to an actress. We must go further and perceive both sides of the question, then will open to us that world where there is neither marrying nor giving in marriage, of which the great enemy of his age's morality has so eloquently spoken. If in the jungle 2 elephants fight lustily, he shall do little who champions either, rather snarl both, tame both, ride both, as the charioteer of the tarot with the opposing sphinxes, black and white. Nor, O man, believe thou that finality is anywhere to be reached in words. I balance A and not A, and finding both false, both true, transcend with B. But whatever be, it is as false and true as be. We reach see so from sea to sea and forever. Not, as Hegel thought, until we reach an idea in which no seed of self-contradiction lurks, for that can never be. The thinkable is false then, once more. Yea, but equally it is true. So also, the old mystics were right, who saw in every phenomenon a dog-faced demon apt only to seduce the soul from the sacred mystery. Right, too. They who interpret every phenomenon as a particular dealing of God with the soul. Yet the latter is the higher formula. The narrowing of the magical circle to a point is an easier task than the destruction of that circle, and all both within and without, by the inrush of a higher dimension. Alas! But either way is the last step. Lucky are most of us if only we can formulate some circle, any circle, nor avails it, O man, to transcend the reason by ignoring it. Thou must pass through the fire to Adonai Melech, child of earth. Thou canst not slip by on either side. Only when the destruction of the Babel Tower of Reason comes as an actual catastrophe of thy career canst thou escape from the ruins. Otherwise, what answer hast thou, O perfect mystic, to whom the doctor speaks of men self-hypnotized into cataleptic trances, to whom the historian denies thy Christ or Muhammad, to whom the ethicist flings his snarls of antisocial, whom indeed all men, thyself the foremost, charge with insanity, with ignorance, with error. Not but an infinite skepsis saves thee here. Do not defend thy Christ, attack the place of thine opponent. Challenge all his premises, dispute the validity of his most deepest axioms, impugn his sanity, doubt his existence. On thine own formula he is but a demon dog-faced or God. Destroy him or be he, that is enough, there is no more to say. Dear children of earth, long have you wandered in darkness. Quit the night and seek the day. Seek not to imitate the language of the wise. 'Tis easy. There is no royal road to illumination. That which I say in light is truth to the children of the light. To them of darkness is a confusion and a snare. Knew ye what agony the nimble acuteness of mine own dialectic was to me, you would not envy me, O dullards, for I fear ever lest I be replacing truth of thought by mere expertness of mechanic skill. Then, seeing the thought as fear, I quench it masterly. Whence rise other evil things, the thought? Is this too mere trickery of the mind? Is this too cowardice, and others by the score? So answering one by one and one and all, reason breaks down, and either deep sleep loosens all my limbs, and darkness falls upon my soul. Or else, but you know well what else, dear children of the light. To you, Konx and Pax, light and extension is your natural home. You have written these essays by my pen. Not on you need I bestow them, but to all and every person in the whole world who is without the pale of the order, and even to initiates who are not in possession of the password Jor the time being, and to all those who have resigned, demitted, or been expelled, I dedicate this revelation of the arcana which are in the adytum of God-nourished silence. While, on the other hand, St. Paul spoke up on the hill of Mars to the empty-headed Athenians, but I would rather talk to the stars than to empty-headed Athenians. It's only too easy to form a cult, to cry a crusade with Divus Volt, but you won't get much of a good result from empty-headed Athenians. The people of London much resemble those empty-headed Athenians. I could very easily make them tremble, those empty-headed Athenians. A pinch of Bible, a gallon of gas, and I or any other guest asked could bring to our mystical moonlight mass those empty-headed Athenians. In fine, I have precious little use for empty-headed Athenians. The birds I have snared shall all go loose. They are empty-headed Athenians. I thought perhaps I might do some good, but it's 10 to 1 if I ever should, and I doubt if I would save such empty-headed Athenians. If I could, so with any luck I shall bid farewell to the empty-headed Athenians. For me, they may all of them go for empty-headed Athenians. To hell, I hate your idiot jolts and jars, you monkeys grinning behind your bars. I'm more at home with the winds and the stars than with empty-headed Athenians. Chapter 2. The Wake World. My name is Lola, because I am the key of delights, and the Virgo Mundi. Other children in my dream call me Lola Daydream. When am awake, you see, I know that I am dreaming, so that they must be very silly children, don't you think? There are people in the dream, too, who are quite grown up and horrid. But the really important thing is the wake-up person. There is only one, for there never could Adonai be anyone like him. I call him my fairy prince. He rides a horse with beautiful wings like a swan, or sometimes a strange creature, Pegasus like a lion or a bull, with a woman's face and breasts, and she has sphinx unfathomable eyes. My fairy prince is a dark boy, very comely. I think everyone must is love him, and yet everyone just afraid. He looks through one as if one had no clothes on in the garden of God. And he had made one, and one could do nothing except in the mirror of his mind. He never laughs or frowns or smiles, because whatever he sees what is beyond as well, and so nothing ever happens. His mouth is redder than any roses you ever saw. I wake up quite when we kiss each other, and there is no dream anymore. But when it is not trembling on mine, I see kisses on his lips, as if he were kissing someone that one could not see. Now you must know that my fairy prince is my lover, and one day he will come for good and ride away with me and marry me. I shan't tell you his name, because it is too beautiful. It is a great secret between us. When we were engaged, he gave me such a beautiful ring. Sigilla annuli, it was like this. First there was his shield, which had a sun on it, and one. Cognomen is 66, some roses, all on a kind of bar, and there was a terrible number, I ordinates 232 ordinates written on it. Then there was a bank of soft roses, with the sun shining through. On it and above there was a red rose on a golden cross, and then there was a three-cornered star shining so bright that nobody could possibly look at it unless they had love in their eyes. That could see anything, I should think, but you see it never could go to sleep because there wasn't any eyelid. On the sides were written INRI and TARO, which mean many strange and beautiful things and terrible things, too. I should think anyone would be afraid to hurt anyone who wore that ring. It is all cut out of an amethyst, and my fairy prince said, "Whenever you want me, look into the ring and call me ever so softly by my name, and kiss the ring, and worship it, and then look ever so deep down incantatio into it, and I will come to you." So I made a pretty poem to say every time I woke up, for you see, I'm a very sleepy girl, and dreamed ever so much about the other children. And that is a pity, because there is only one thing I love, and that is my fairy prince. So, this is the poem I did to worship the ring. Part is words, and part is pictures. You must pick out what the pictures mean, and then a lip makes poetry. The invocation of the ring Adonai, thou inmost self-glittering image of my soul, strong lover to thy bride's desire, call me and claim me and control. I pray thee keep the holy tryst within this ring of amethyst. For on mine eyes the golden hath dawned. My vigil slew the night, the wake world. I saw the image of the one. I came from darkness into LVX. I pray thee keep the holy tryst within this ring of amethyst. I enter I. Me crucified, me slain, interred, arisen, inspired. TRO, me glorified, anointed. Fill with frenzied A. I pray thee keep the holy tryst within this ring of amethyst. I eat my flesh, I drink my blood, I gird my loins, I journey far. For thou hast shown, O plus, I pray thee keep the holy tryst within this ring of amethyst. Prostrate I wait upon thy will, mine angel, for this grace of union. O let this sacrament distill thy conversation and communion. I pray thee keep the holy tryst within this ring of amethyst. I have not told you anything about myself because it doesn't really matter. The only thing I want to tell you about is my fairy prince. But as I am telling you all this, I am 17 years old, and very fair when you shut your eyes to look. But when you open them, I am really dark, with a fair skin. I have ever such heaps of hair, and big round eyes, always wondering at everything. Never mind, it's only a nuisance. I shall tell you what happened one day when I said the poem to the ring. I wasn't really quite awake when I began. But as I said it, it got brighter and brighter. And when I came to Rhyme of Advent, Adonai Amethyst, the 5th time, there are 5 verses because my lover's name has 5 V's in it. He galloped across the beautiful green sunset, spurring the winged horse till the blood made all the sky turn rosy red. So he caught me up and set me on his horse, and I clung to his neck as we galloped into the night. Then he told me he would take me to his palace and show me everything. And one day when we were married, I should be mistress of it all. Then I wanted to be married to him at once. And then I saw I couldn't be because I was so sleepy and had bad dreams. And one can't be a good wife if one is always doing that sort of thing. But he said I would be older one day and not sleep so much, and everyone slept a little. But the great thing was not to be lazy and contented with the dream, so I mean to fight hard. By and by, we came to a beautiful green place with the strangest regnum spati house you ever saw. Round the big meadow there lay a wonderful palatium, ox snake with steel gray plumes, and he had his tail in his mouth and came to eat. And my fairy prince said he would go on like that till there was nothing left at all. Then I said it would get smaller and smaller and crush the meadow and the palace, and I think perhaps I began to cry. But my fairy prince said, "Don't be such silly," and I wasn't old enough to understand all that it meant. But one day I should, and all one had to do was to be as glad as glad. So he kissed me in ceremoniam when we got off the horse, and he took me to the door of the house, and we went in. It was frightfully dark in the passage, and I felt tied so that I couldn't move. So I promised to myself to love him always, and he kissed me. It was dreadfully, dreadfully dark, though. But he said not to be afraid, silly. And it's getting lighter now. Keep straight forward, darling. And then he kissed me again and said, "Welcome to my palace. I will tell you all about how it was built, because it is the most beautiful palace that ever was." On the sunset side were all the baths, Domus X, and the bedrooms were in front of us as we were. The baths were all of vivi regnum porta forloci secundum pale olive-colored marble. And the bedrooms had lemon-colored elementa everything. Then there were the kitchens on the sunrise side, and they were russet, like dead leaves are in autumn in one's dreams. The place we had come through was perfectly black everything, and only used for offices and such things. There were the most horrid things clalifoth everywhere about, black beetles and cockroaches and goodness knows what. But they can't hurt when the fairy prince is there. I think a little girl would be eaten, though she went in there alone. Then he said, "Come on, this is only the servants' hall. Nearly everybody stays there all their lives." And I said, "Kiss me." So he said, "Every step you take is only possible when you say that." We came into a dreadful dark passage again. So narrow and low that via 1V crux, it was like a dirty old tunnel, and yet so vast and wide that everything in the whole world was contained in it. We saw all the strange dreams and awful shapes of fear, and really I don't know how we ever got through. Except that the prince called for some splendid, strong creatures to guard us. There was an eagle that flew and beat his cherubim wings, and tore and bit at everything that came near. And there was a lion that roared terribly, and his breath was of flame and burnt up the things, so that there was a great cloud, and rain fell gently and purely. So that he really did the things good by fighting them. And there was a bull that tossed them on his horns, so that they changed into butterflies. And there was a man who kept on telling everybody to be quiet and not make a noise. So we came at last in the next house of the palace. It was a great dome of violet, and in the center Domus Nothing the moon shone. She was a full moon, and yet she looked like a woman quite young. Yet her hair was silver and finer than spiders' fundamentum webs, and it rayed about her like one can't say what. It was all too beautiful. In the middle of the hall there was a black stone pillar, from the top of which sprang a fountain of pearls. And as they fell yadvi membrum upon the floor, they changed the dark marble to the color of blood, sancti foteries. And it was like a green universe full of flowers, and little children playing among them. So I said, "Shall we be married in this house?" And he said, "No, this is only the house where the business is carried on. All the palace rests upon this house, but you are called Lola because you are the key of delights. Many people stay here all their lives, though." I made him kiss me, and we went on to Via or Vivi, thence another passage which opened out of the servants' hall. This passage was all fire and flame and full of coffins. There was an angel blowing ever so hard on a trumpet, and people getting up out of the coffins. My fairy prince said, "Most people never wake up for anything less." So we went at the same time. It was, "You see, in dreams people can only be in one place at a time. That's the best of being awake, V.O.K.V." Caput through another passage which was lighted by the sun. Yet there were fairies dancing in a great green ring, just as if it was night. And there were 2 children playing by the wall, and my fairy prince and I played as we went. And he said, "Differences that we are going through. Most people play without a purpose. If you are traveling, it is all right, and play makes the journey seem short. Domus the 8th, then we came out into the 3rd or 8th, it depends which way you v. Splendor count them, because there are 10 house, and that was so splendid you can't imagine. In the first place, it was a bright orange color, And then it had flashes of light all over it, going so fast we couldn't see them. And then there was the sound of the sea, and one could look through into the deep. And there was the ocean raging beneath one's feet, and strong dolphins riding on it and crying aloud, "Holy, holy, holy," in such an ecstasy you can't think, and rolling and playing for sheer joy. It was all lighted by a tiny, weeny, shy little planet, sparkling and silvery. And now and then a wave of fiery chariots filled with eager spearmen blazed through the sky. And my fairy prince said, "Isn't it all fine?" But I knew he didn't really mean it, so I said, "Kiss me," and he kissed me, and we went on. He said, "Kid, little girl of mine, there's many a one stays there all his life." I forgot to say that the whole place was just one mass of books, and people reading them till they were so silly they didn't know what they were doing. And there were cheats, and doctors, and thieves. I was really very glad to go away. There were 3 ways into the 7th house, and the first was via PV Cranium, such a funny way. We walked through a pool, each on the arm of a great big beetle, and then we found ourselves on a narrow, winding path. There were nasty jackals about. They made such a noise, and at the end I could see 2 towers. Then there was the queerest moon you ever saw, only a quarter full. The shadows fell so strangely, one could see the most mysterious shapes, like great bats with women's faces, and blood dripping from their mouths, and creatures partly wolves and partly men, everything changing one into the other. And we saw shadows like old, ugly women creeping about on sticks, and all of a sudden they would fly up into the air, shrieking the funniest kind of songs, and then suddenly one would come down flop. And you saw she was really quite young and ever so lovely. And she would have nothing on, and as you looked at her, she would crumble away like a biscuit. Then there was another passage which was really too secret, 5IV. Hamas for anything. All I shall tell you is there was the most beautiful goddess that ever was, and she was washing herself in a river of dew. If you ask what she is doing, she says, "I'm making thunderbolts." It was only starlight, and yet one could see quite clearly, so don't think I'm making a mistake. The third path Isa, most terrible passage. It's via 9V. Oh, that's all a great war, and there's earthquakes and chariots of fire, and all the castles breaking to pieces. I was glad when we came to the Green Palace. It was all built of malachite and emerald, and there was the loveliest Dalmas 7V, Victoria Gentlest living, and I was married to my fairy prince there, and we had the most delicious honeymoon, and I had a beautiful baby, and then I remembered myself, but only just in time, and said, "Kiss me," and said, "Kiss me," and said, my goodness, but that was a near thing that time. My little girl nearly went to sleep. Most people who reach the 7th house stay there all their lives, I can tell you. It did seem a shame to go on. There was such a flashing green star to light it, and all the air was filled with amber-colored flames like kisses. And we could see through the floor, and there were terrible lions like furnaces for fury, and they all roared out, "Holy, holy, holy," and leaped and danced for joy. And when I saw myself in the mirrors, the dome was one mass of beautiful green mirrors, I saw how serious I looked, and that I had to go on. I hoped the fairy prince would look serious too, because it is a most dreadful business going beyond the 7th house. But he only looked the same as ever. But oh, how I kissed him, and how I clung to him, or I think I should never have had the courage to go up those dreadful passages, especially knowing what was at the end of them. And now I'm only a little girl, and I'm ever so tired of writing, but I'll tell you all about the rest another time. Explicit Capitulum Primum Vel de Collegio Externo, Part 2. I was telling you how we started from the Green Palace. There are 3 passages that lead to the Treasure House of Gold, and all of them are very dreadful. One is called the Terror by Night, and another the Arrow by Day, and the third has a name that people are afraid to hear, so I won't say. Oculus, in but the first, we came to a mighty throne of gray granite, shaped like the sweetest pussy cat you ever saw, and set up on a desolate heath. It was midnight, and the devil came down and sat in the midst. But my fairy prince whispered, "Hush, it is a great secret, but his name is Yehezwa, and he is the savior of the world." And that was very funny, because the girl next me thought it was Jesus Christ, till another fairy prince, my prince's brother, whispered as he kissed her, "Hush, tell nobody ever, that is Satan, and he is the savior of the world." We were a very great company. I can't tell you all the strange things we did and said. or the song we sang as we danced face outwards in a great circle, ever closing in on the devil on the throne. But whenever I saw a toad or a bat or some horrid insect, my fairy prince always whispered, "It is the savior of the world." And I saw that it was so. We did all the most beautiful, wicked things you can imagine, and yet all the time we knew they were good and right, and must be done if ever we were to get to the house of gold. So we enjoyed ourselves very much and ate the most extraordinary supper you can think of. There were babies roasted whole and stuffed with pork sausages and olives, and some of the girls cut off chops and steaks from their own bodies, and gave them to a beautiful white cook at a silver grill that was lighted with the gas of dead bodies and marshes, and he cooked them splendidly, and we all enjoyed it immensely. Then there was a tame goat with a gold collar that went about laughing with everyone, and he was all shaved in patches like a poodle. We kissed him and petted him, and it was lovely. You must remember that I never let go of my fairy prince for a single instant, or of course I should have been turned into a horrid black toad. Then there was another passage called the Arrow by Day, and there via UV. Sis Tentaculum was a most lovely lady, all shining with the sun and moon and stars, who was lighting a great bowl of water with one hand, by dropping dew on it out of a cup, and with the other she was putting out a terrible fire with a torch. She had a red lion and a white eagle that she had always had ever since she was a little girl. She had found them in a nasty pit full of all kinds of filth, and they were very savage, but by always treating them kindly they had grown up faithful and good. This should be a lesson to all of us, never to be unkind to our pets. My fairy prince was laughing all the time in the third path. There via 3v pisses was nobody there, but an old gentleman who had put on his bones outside, and was trying ever so hard to cut down the grass with a scythe. But the faster he cut it, the faster it grew. My fairy prince said, "Everybody that ever was has come along this path, and yet only one ever got to the end of it. But I saw a lot of people walking straight through as if they knew it quite well." He explained, though, that they were really only one, and if you walked through that, proved it. I thought that was silly. But he's much older and wiser than I am, so I said nothing. The truth is that it is a very difficult palace to talk about, and the further you get in, the harder it is to say what you mean, because it all has to be put into dream talk, as of course the language of the wake world is silence. Pulchritudo, so never mind, let me get on. We came by and by to the sixth house. I forgot to say that all those three paths were really one, because they all meant that things were different inside to outside, and so people couldn't judge. It was fearfully interesting, but mind you don't go in those passages without the fairy prince. And of course only put your mouth to my head and your hand. There, that'll tell anybody who knows that I've really been there, and that it's all true that I'm telling you. Ceremonium 5 equals 6 degrees. This sixth house is called the Treasure House of Gold. It's a most mysterious place as ever you were in. First there's a tiny, tiny, tiny humilitas doorway. You must crawl through on your hands and knees. And even then I scraped ever such a lot of skin off my back. Then you have to supplicium be nailed on a red board with 4 arms, with a great gold circle in the middle, and that hurts you dreadfully. Then they make you swear the most solemn things you ever heard of, how you would be faithful to the fairy prince, and live for nothing but to know him better and better. So the nails stopped hurting, because of course, I saw that I was really being married, and this was part of it, and I was as glad. And at that moment my fairy prince put his hand on my head, and I tell you, honor bright, it was more wake up than ever before, even than when he used to kiss me. After that, they said I could go into the bride chamber, but it was only the most curious sepulchrum room that ever was with 7 sides. There was a dreadful red dragon on the floor, and all the sides were painted every color you can think of, with curious figures and pictures. The light was not like dream light at all. It was wake light, and it came through a beautiful rose in the ceiling. In the middle was a table all covered with beautiful pictures and texts, and there were ever such strange things on it. There was a little crucifix in the middle, all of diamonds and emeralds and rubies and other precious stones, and there was a dagger with a golden handle and a cup full of the most delicious wine. And there was a curious coin with the strangest writing on and a funny little stick that was covered with flames, like a rose tree is with roses. Beside this strange coin was a heavy iron chain, and I took it and put it round my neck because I was bound to my fairy prince, and I would never go about like other people till I found him again. and they took the dagger and dipped it in the cup and stabbed me all over to show that I was not afraid to be hurt. If only I could find my fairy prince. Then I took the crucifix and held it up to make more light, in case he was somewhere in the dark corners, but no. Yet I knew he was there somewhere, so I thought he must be in the box, for under the table was a great chest. And I was past his Patris Nostri CRC, terribly sad because I felt something dreadful was going to happen. And sure enough, when I had the courage, I asked them to open the box, and the same people that made me crawl through that horrid hole and lost my fairy prince, and nailed me to the red board, took away the table, and opened the box, and there was my fairy prince. Quite dead, if you only knew how sorry I felt. But I had with baculum adepti me a walking stick with wings, and a shining sun at the top that had been his, and I touched him on the breast to try and wake him, but it was no good. Only I seemed to hear his voice saying wonderful things, and I was quite certain he wasn't really dead. So I put the walking stick on his breast, and another little thing he had, which I Crux and Sada had forgotten to tell you about. It was a kind of cross with an oval handle that he had been very fond of. But I couldn't go away without Petum at something of his. So I took a shepherd's staff and a little whip with Osiris' blood on it, and jewels oozing from the blood, if you know what I mean, that they had put in his hands when they buried him. Then I went away and cried and cried and cried and cried. But before I had got very far, they called me back, and the people who had been so stern were smiling. And I saw they had taken the coffin out of the little current or mortuus room with 7 sides. And the coffin was quite empty. Then non est hicili, they began to tell us all about it, and I heard my fairy prince within the little room saying holy exalted things, such as the stars trace in the sky as they travel in the car called millions of years. Then they took me into the little room, and there was my fairy prince standing in the middle. So I knelt down, and we all kissed his beautiful feet. And the myriads of eyes like diamonds that were hidden in his feet laughed joy at us. One couldn't lift one's head, for he was too glorious to behold. But he spoke wonderful words like dying nightingales that have sorrowed for the fading of the roses, and pressed themselves to death upon the thorns, and one's whole body advenant, and became single eye, so that one saw, as if the unborn thought, light brooded over an eternal sea. Then was light as the lightning flaming subtribus spee out of the east, even unto the west, and it was fashioned as the swiftness of a sword. By and by one rose up, then one seemed to be quite dead, and buried in the center of a pyramid of the most brilliant light it is possible to think of. And it was wake light too, and everybody knows that even wake darkness is really brighter than the dream light. So you must just guess what it was like. There was more than that too. I can't possibly tell you. I know too what I enter I on the ring meant, and I can't tell you that either, because the dream language has such a lot of important words missing. It's a very silly language, I think. By and by, I came to myself a little. And now I was really and truly married to the fairy prince. So I suppose we shall always be near each other now. There was the way out of the little room with millions of changing symbolahados colors, ever so beautiful, and it was lined with armed men waving chameleon symbola, their swords for joy like flashes of lightning, and all about us glittered gladius and serpents danced and sang for joy. There was a winged horse ready for us when we came out on the slopes of the mountain. You see, the 6th house is really in a mountain called Mount Abiegnes, Mons Abiegnes V. Cavernarum, only one doesn't see it because one goes through indoors all the way. There's one house you have to go outdoors to get to because no passage has ever been made. But I'll tell you about that afterwards. It's the 3rd house. So we got on the horse and went away for our honeymoon. I shan't tell you a single word about the honeymoon. Explicit capitulum secundum vel de collegio ad ss porta colleges interned. Part 3, you mustn't suppose the honeymoon is ever really over because it just isn't. But he said to me, Princess, you haven't been all over the palace yet. Your Sika? House is the 3rd, because it's so convenient for the 2nd where I usually live. The king, my Capitan father, lives in the 1st. He's never to be seen, He's very, very old nowadays. I am practically regent, of course. You must never forget that I am really he. Only one generation back is ever so softly, you will be a mother. There will be a fairy prince again, to run away with another pretty little sleepy head. Then I saw Arcanum de Via that when fairy princes were really and truly married, they became a cult of fairy kings, and that I was quite wrong ever to be ashamed of being only a little girl and afraid of spoiling his prospects. Because really, you see, he could never become king and have a son of fairy prince without me. But one can only do that by getting to the third house, and it's a dreadful journey, I do most honestly assure you. There are 2 passages, one from the 8th house and one from the 6th. The first is all water, and the second is almost worse, because you have to balance yourself so carefully, or you fall and hurt yourself via DV. Aqua, to go through the first, you must be painted all over with blood up to your waist, and you cross your legs, and then they put a rope around one ankle and swing you off. I had such a pretty white petticoat on, and my prince said I looked just like a white pyramid with a huge red cross on the top of it, which made me ever so glad, because now I knew I should be the savior of the world, which is what one wants to be, isn't it? Only sometimes the world means all the other children in the dream, and sometimes the dream itself, and sometimes the wake things one sees before one that, and is the quite awake. The prince tells first house where his father lived me, really truly, only was really a wake house. All the others had little sleep house about them, and the further you got, the more awake you were. I began to know just how much was dream and how much wake. Via 9V Pratika, then there was the other passage where there was a narrow-edged stimulance of green crystal, which was all you had to walk on. And there was a beautiful blue feather balancing on the edge, and if you disturbed the feather, there was a lady with a sword, and she would cut off your head. So I didn't dare hardly to breathe, and all around there were thousands and thousands of beautiful people in green who danced and danced like anything. And at the end there was the terrible door of the Delmas Vivi, Severitas' 5th house, which is the royal armory. And when we came in, the house was full of steel machinery, some red hot and some white hot, and the din was simply fearful. So to get the noise out of my head, I took the little whip and whipped myself till all my blood poured down over everything, and I saw the whole house, like a cataract of foaming blood rushing headlong from the flaming and scintillating star of fire that blazed and blazed in the candescent dome, and everything went red before my eyes, and a great flame like a strong wind blew through the house with a noise louder than any thunder could possibly be, so that I couldn't hold myself hardly, and I took up the sharp knives of the machines and cut myself all over. And the noise got louder and louder, and the flame burnt through and through me, so that I was very glad when my prince said, "You wouldn't think it, would you, sweetheart? But there are lots of people who stay here all their lives. There are 3 ways into the 4th house from below. The first via 5 Pugnus Passage is a very curious place, all full of wheels and ever such strange creatures like monkeys and sphinxes and jackals climbing about them and trying to get to the top. It was very silly because there isn't really any top to a wheel at all. The place you want to get to is the center if you want to be quiet. Then there was a really lovely passage, Yadalavi. Manus, like a deep wood in springtime, the dearest old man came along who had lived there all his life, because he was the guardian of it, and he didn't need to travel, because he belonged to the first house, really, from the very beginning. He wore a vast cloak, and he carried a lamp and a long stick, and he said that the cloak meant you were to be silent and not say anything you saw, and the lamp meant you were to tell everybody and make them glad. And the stick was like a guide to tell you which to do. But I didn't quite believe that, because I am getting a grown-up girl now, and I wasn't to be put off like that. I could see that the stick was really the measuring rod with which the whole palace was built, and the lamp was the only light they had to build it by, and the cloak was the abyss of darkness that covers it all up. That is why dream people never see beautiful things like I'm telling you about. All their houses are built of common red bricks, and they sit in them all day and play silly games with counters. And oh, dear me, how they do cheat and quarrel. When anyone gets 1,000,000 counters, he is so glad you can't think and goes away and tries to change some of the counters for the things he really wants. And he can't, so you nearly die of laughing. Though, of course, it would be dreadfully sad if it were wake life. But I was telling you about the Via DV. Serpents waste to the 4th house, and the 3rd way is all full of lions, and a person might be afraid. Only whenever one comes to bite at you, there is a lovely lady who puts her hands in its mouth and shuts it. So we went through quite safely, and I thought of Daniel in the lion's den. Delmas the 4th house is the most wonderful of all I had ever seen. Ivi. Benignitas is the most heavenly blue mansion. It is built of beryl and amethyst. and lapis lazuli and turquoise and sapphire. The center of the floor is a pool of purest aquamarine, and in it is water. Only you can see every drop as a separate crystal, and the blue tinge filtering through the light. Above there hangs a calm yet mighty globe of deep sapphirine blue. Round it, there were 9 mirrors, and there is a noise that means when you understand it. Joy, joy, joy. There are violet flames darting through the air, each one a little sob of happy love. Ratio naturae, one began to see what the dream world was really for at last. Every naturati time anyone kissed anyone for real love. That was a little throb of violet flame in this beautiful house in the wake world. And we bathed and swam in the pool, and were so happy you can't think. But they said, little girl, you must pay for the entertainment. Gee, I forgot to tell you there was music like fountains make, as they rise and fall. Adeptum opertet ration is only, of course, much more wonderful than that. So I asked what must pay, and they said, you are now mistress of all these houses, facultatum from the 4th to the 9th. You have managed the servants. All regnaire well enough since your marriage. Now you must manage the others, because till you do, you can never go on to the 3rd house. So I said, it seems to me that they are all in perfectly good order, but they took me up in the air. And then I saw that the outsides were horribly disfigured with great advertisements, and every single house had written all over it. 1st house, this is His Majesty's favorite residence. No other genuine. Beware of worthless imitations. Come in here and spend life. Come in here and see the serpent eat his tail. So I was furious, as you may imagine, and had men go and put all the proper numbers on them and a little sarcastic remark to make them ashamed. So they read 5th house and mostly dream at that. 7th house. External splendor and internal corruption and so on, and on each one I put each thoroughfare from here to the 1st house. The only way is out of doors by order. This was frightfully annoying because in the old days we could gladium. Well, I'd walk about inside everywhere and not get wet if it rained. But nova custo devis omnibus portas auts cium days. There isn't any way from the 4th to the 3rd house. You could go, of course, by chariot from the 5th to the 3rd, or through the house where the twins live from the 6th to the 3rd, but that isn't allowed unless you have been to the 4th house too, and go from there at the same time. It was here they told me what TARO on the ring meant. First nomen XP nomen. Adney, there are 78 parts to it, which makes a perfect plan of Carti Terapii. Egyptiorum, the whole palace, so you can always find your way if you remember to say TARO, then you remember. INRI was on the ring too. INRI is short for LVX, which means the brilliance of the wide wake light. And that too is the name of my fairy prince, only spelled short. The Romans said it had 65 parts, which is 5 times 13. And 78 is 6 times 13. To get into the wake world, you must know your 13 times table quite well. So if you take them both together, that makes 11 times 13, and then you say abrahadabra, which is a most mysterious word because it has 11 letters in it. You remember the houses are numbered both ways, so that the 3rd house is called the 8th house too, and the 5th, the 6th, and so on. But you can't tell what lovely things that means till you've been through them all and got to the very end. So when you look at the ring and see NRI and TR on it, that means that it is like a policeman keeping on saying, pass along, please. I would have liked to stay in the 4th house all my HE. But I began to see it was just a little dream house too, and I couldn't rest because my own house was the very next one. But it's too awful to tell you how to get there. You want the most fearful lot of courage, and there's nobody to help you, nobody all, and there's no proper passage. But it's frightfully exciting, and you must wait till next time before I tell you how I started on that horrible journey, and if I ever got there or not. Explicit Capitulum tertium vel de collegio interno, part 4th, via v. Valum now, I shall tell you about the chariot race in the first passage. The chariot is all carved out of pure clear amber, so that electric sparks fly about as the furs rub it. The whole cushions and rugs are all beautiful soft ermine fur. There is a canopy off bright blue with stars like the sky in the dream world, and the chariot is drawn by 2 sphinxes, one black and one white. The charioteer is a most curious person. He is a great big crab in the most lovely glittering armor, and he can just drive. His name is the mysterious name. I told you Nomen Knight. 22, 22, 19 to 418, about with 11 letters in it. But we call him Jehu short, because Abraham, he's only 19 years old. It's important to know, though, because this journey is the most difficult of all. And without the chariot, one couldn't ever do it, because it is so far. Much farther than the heaven is from the earth in the dream world. The passage where the twins live is very difficult, too. They are via two sisters, and one is very pure and good, and the other is a horrid gladium fast woman. But that shows you how silly dream language is really. There is another way to put it. You can say they are two know and enjoy, is sisters, and one very silly and ignorant. And the other has learned to now, when one is a princess, it is very important to have good manners. So you have to go into the passage and take one on each arm and go through with them singing and dancing. And if you hurt the feelings of either of them the least little bit in the world, it would show you were not really a great lady, only a dress lady. And there is a man with a bow and arrow in the air, and he would soon finish you. And you would never get to the third house at all. But the real serious difficulty is the outdoors. You have to leave the Via Quae non House of Est Love, as they call the fourth house. You are quite vaginae naked. You must take off your husband clothes, and your baby quinque animae clothes, and all your pleasure clothes, and your skin, and your flesh, and your bones. Every one of them must come right off. And then you must take off your feeling clothes, and then your idea clothes, and then what we call your tendency clothes, which you have always worn, and which make you what you are. After that, you take off your consciousness clothes, which you have always thought were your very own self, and you leap out into the cold abyss, and you can't think how lonely it is. There isn't any light or any path or anything to catch hold of to help you, and there is no fairy prince anymore. You can't even hear his voice calling to you to come on. There's nothing to tell you which way to go, and you feel the most horrible sensation of falling away from everything that ever was. You've got nothing at all. You don't know how awful it is. You would turn back if you could only stop falling, but luckily you can't. So you fall and fall faster and faster, and I can't tell you anymore. Domus Fee. Intellectua, the third house is called the House of Sorrow. They gave me new clothes of the queerest kind, because one never thinks of them as one's best egoida's own clothes, but only as clothes. It is a house of utmost darkness. There is a pool of black solemn water in the shining obsidian, and ego est one is like a vast veiled figure of wonderful beauty brooding over non-ego purpurium, the sea, and by the pains come upon one. I can't tell you anything about the pains, only they are different from any other pains, because they start from inside you, from a deeper, truer kind partus of you than you ever do. By and by you see a tremendous blaze of a new sun in the sixth house, and you are as glad as glad as glad. And there are millions of trumpets blown and voices crying, "Hail to the fairy prince," meaning the new one that you have had for your baby. And at that moment you find you are living in the first three houses all at once, for you feel the delight of your own dear prince and his love, and the old king stirs in his silence in the first house, and thousands of millions of blessings shoot out like rays of light, and everything is all harmony and beauty below, and crowned above with the crown of 12 stars, which is the only way you can put it into dream talk. Vita Adepti, now you see you don't need to struggle to go on anymore, because you know already that all the house is one palace, and you move about in your own wake world, just as is necessary. All the paths up via V. Flavis to the second house all open. The path of the Hierophant with the Via ITV, flaming star and the incense in the vast cathedral, and the path of the Fenestra mighty ruler, who governs everything with his orb and his crown via V. Borda and his scepter. There is the path of the Queen of Love, which is more beautiful than anything, and along it my own dear lover passes to my bridal chamber. Then there are the three ways, TC the holy house of the old king, the way by which he is joined with the new VI. Gamless fairy prince, where dwells a moonlight virgin with an open book, and always reads beautiful words therein, smiling mysteriously through her shining veil, woven of sweet thoughts and pure kisses. And there is the way by which I always go to the king my father, via 3V. Domus. And that passage is built of thunder and lightning, but there's a holy magician called Hermes who takes me through so quickly that I arrive sometimes even at the very moment that I start. Last of all is the most mysterious passage of them all. And if any of you saw it, you via Fiendy Bows would think there was a foolish man in it, being bitten by crocodiles and dogs, and carrying a sack with nothing any use at all in it. But really it is the man who meant to wake up, and did wake up. So that is his house. He is the old king himself, and so are you. So he wouldn't care what anyone thought he was. Really, all the passages to the first three houses are very useful. All the dream world and the half-dream world, and the wake world, are governed from those passages. I began to see now how very unreal even the wake world is, because there is just a little dream in it, and the right world is the wide, 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 wide wake world. My lover calls me little Lola wide awake, not Lola daydream anymore, but it is always Lola because I am the key of delights. I never told you about the first two houses, and really you wouldn't understand. But the second house is Domus Sapientia V, gray, because the light and dark flash by so quick it's all blended into one. And in it lives my lover, and that's all I care about. Is the first house is my lover and I when we are one. You wouldn't understand that so brilliant that you can't think. And there too Domus V Corona Summa either. And the last thing I shall say is that one begins to see that there isn't really quite a wide, wide, wide wake world, till the serpent outside has finished eating up his tail. And I don't really and truly understand that myself. But it doesn't matter. What you must ride away with you all do first is to find the fairy prince to come. And so don't bother about the serpent yet. That's all. Explicit obusculum in capitulo quarto vel de collegio summa, T, containing an essay on Chapter 3, Ali Sloper, or the 40 Liars, a Christmas diversion Noigel Jaelu and 4F 9p dramatis personae, with suggestions for cast. Ali Sloper, age 120 years, Mr. Christian Rosenkreutz. Bones, greatly honored Forder CCR. Mr. Dunlava Neurosynst. Neil Booley, greatly honored Forder imaginary chairman, waits, etc. Any imaginary actors. Dr. Waistcoats, famous troupe of pantomimists, the 40 Liars, Whitehead, Equilibrist, Dean, and Donnie, Knockabout, Diet. Nehushtan, Serpentine Dancer, The Ales, Ralph, Mike, and Sam, Serio Comics, Lucifer Florifar, Egyptian Duettists. The Mysterious Mathers in his great sketch, The Family Vault. Mr. Mathers will borrow any required properties from the audience. Reside on Abbey Agnes, and my name is Flodden James. I am not up to small deceits or any sinful games, and ill tell in simple language what I know about the bounder that broke up our society, and also broke the founder. The Clippers Eccentrics, with Tim Happy Hal Barth, Ura, and Ike Baker. Quick Change Artists, Lamarbra, Lightning Calculator, Mac and Mike Face Artists, the Yonley Yates, Whatever Yates, Barrage and his Magic Class, Moloch and Bill Feger, Sirius Miss Schnar de Zeus, Shadiel. High in his great songs, the Yonasuckle and the B.G. knew every morning is the love, higher remember, higher remember. How's that for high? And G. Lingam longer, Lucy. Dr. Jelinek, contortionist, Barry there. La Chic in her famous glory song, Harry Campion, the India rubber-faced man. Man, the only genuine mermaid exhibiting the four constant sylphi, the living skeleton in her songs. I'm Freaks, the Empress of Rasher, etc. Tabicat. The horny man from Maserati. Upperman, and other supers. Noga, the little bit of sweet stuff. Lieber Hergot with his trained beasts includes the unicorn from the stars, only one in Europe. Adam Kedman, low comic. The terrible Tetragrammaton, Greco-Jewish wrestler, grand patriotic spectacle. Warlike preparations, General Eloah arrives from Temeh of Edom, Colonel Holian summoned from Mount Paran, the wilderness of Seir, the tents of Cushan. A dervish stronghold, General Tetragrammaton's flying column. City of Miraz, Vifarnarvir. Desert in a body. A traitor in the camp. Melchizedek Pasha's cunning move. The river Kishon sweeps away the Moabites. By Mr. Frank Parker. Battle at last. Desperate stand of the kings of Edom. Marshal Jah's flank attack. Everlasting mountains scattered, perpetual hills bowed. By Mr. Frank Parker. Charge of the gallant Karnaim. Rout of the Edomites, the Dukes in full flight, and grand finale, blowing up of the Tower of Babel, by Mr. Frank Parker. practicable drawing room littered with innumerable sheets of double elephant Whitman paper, about to be an impracticable table of correspondences, a roaring fire, sofas, and chairs. In presenting this play before a British audience, the manager should come forward and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, owing to the severe indisposition of the author, no obscene jests will be found to occur in the dialogue in this play." The actors have, however, been instructed to pause and wink at frequent intervals when you are at liberty to imagine an unusually profound and peculiarly foul double entendre. We have also gone to the expense of hiring people to sit in the stalls and start the laughs, so that there's no excuse whatever for any of you to complain of having passed an unpleasant evening. The scene rises. The Bones family awed Mr. Bowley as stang round the fire. Upstage, Mrs. P. Chuck to T.P. Deal, chased by Mr. Mantinella. Runs off hard, barks her shin on a chair. Mrs. P.C. am not happy. I am not happy. Oh, Gluin Devane, what shall I say? Mr. M.H. Most people would say, damn, Ma Bell migraine. Mrs. P.C. sighed, if Mitterlink gives me a name like a headache, will not Shaw call me simply a cough drop? Exit. Prompior. Dangrily, the truth, the truth, the truth, the truth, the truth. Exit. Blare of trumpets, Mrs. Bones. A truce to this theatrical folly. More coffee, Mr. Bowley? Bowley. Please, I hope you will forgive me, Mrs. Bones, but in honor of the festive season, and as relaxation of our severe labors upon the table of correspondences, I have taken the liberty of engaging Dr. Waistcoat's celebrated troupe of variety artistes to perform at intervals during the evening. I'm sure we're very much obliged by your kindness. I trust it did not cost you too much, Bowley. Waistcoat is an old friend of mine, you know, connected with the Straits, the Dover Straits on the mother's side. Not omnis morior is his motto. Very likely, but on the other hand, he's never really Guzdi alive, so one can bargain with him to great advantage, Mrs. Bones. Well, I'm sure it will all be most delightful. We get very little of the old-fashioned Christmases now. Bones. 2,000 years hence, we shall all be saying the same about Bolema's Day in the sunset of Booleanity. Bowley, respect my modesty, Pyrrho. Zoroastrianism, if you please. Mrs. Bones, more coffee. Bowley, please. You do not ask what your husband means, Mrs. Bones. I give you two up. Bones. Today we celebrate Christ's birth. Then Bowley, one hide my blushes in thy breast, O babe. So the child weeps. Takite, for God's sake. Done. The child smiles, Mrs. Bones. But I thought your birthday was in October. Bowley, it is. And why did I arrange it on that date? Because I knew that I was the Messiah. Pass the baby, please. And that people would celebrate the day according to my word, Mrs. Bones. But why? Bones signals wildly to her, but in vain. Bowley, because children born in summer thrive best, Mrs. Bones. But why? Bowley. Brother, you waste alarm. They have ears and hear not, but I am not talking. I'm making my table of correspondences. I drink to my table of correspondences. Drinks. Bones picks up a book on Indian mysticism. Thunder. Slow music. Bowley. More coffee, please. I attribute the baby to Malkuth. Mrs. Bones, may I paint the baby bright yellow all over? Heedless of mother's sighs and groans, he painted blue the baby Bones in the well-known Porphyrion of the late John Keats, on whom be peace. At this stage in my career, drop that silly Babu twaddle. I offer you the following desperate alternative, greatly honored Froder. We will go on with the table, or I will read you my latest glorious masterpiece entitled Amath. The Hebrew for truth. Baby, reflect, O bad-eyed child, upon the circumstance that Amath adds up to 441, which is the square of 21, EIA, divine name of Kether. Also, mystic number of Tifereth, Zazde Tifereth clause, and Gigi, I will devote myself to great work. Etc. you remember, meaning truth is of Kether, the end, and of Tifereth the means. Also, Aleph is the fool Kether, Mem the hanged man, Tifereth, and Tau the sign of the cross and the virgin of the world. May be read by Tarot, McGregor Mathers. Fools hang virgins. What about wise men? Hush, baby dear. Wait till you're in Arahat on Ararat, and then you'll know all about it, you beetle-headed little bitch. Nothing like early and clear instruction, Mrs. Bones. Train up a child in a mustache. Why don't you get Cecil some pomade hongroise? I attribute pomade hongroise to Gemini. and it is called the waxen or sticky intelligence, because he sticketh together everything that is stuck together, and disposeth in right conformation the hairs that are beneath the supernals in that orifice of the nose of the most holy ancient one, which is called his nose, and distributeth tens of thousands of severities upon the inferiors. This is that which is written, Psalms, Exit Sykes 4. Also, we have heard in Bereatha that this is spoken of the shells, Kulifoth you would call them. Baby, as it is written, she sells seashells. Nay, Mrs. Bones, if I be drunken is of the wine of Iacchus, the dew of immortality, the lustral thunet tain in the chalice of the Stolistes or Stolistria. Or rather attribute it to your own mince pie and its awful and avenging punitive currents. But as I say, your alleged husband trains neither his child nor his mustache, and I will contend with him, will fight and overcome him. Yea, I will inflict upon him my celebrated essay upon truth, and he shall never rise again. It is written in the manner of Immanuel Kant, aye, but of Immanuel Kant in bed with Bessie Bellwood. The hands are the hands of Schopenhauer, but the voice of Arthur Roberts. Is listen to the Jataka, O child of wonder, and the innocent eyes, and if you yell, you will be deposited in the coal hole. Superlatively honored fratras and sorors of the Order of the Tin Sunset, compare Charles Baudelaire, our Lord. Assist me to open the temple, my mouth, Mrs. Bones. Mouth is part of body, and body is temple, Colossians F.E. 15. You may say I need no assistance in the grade of 10 equals 1, and don't you forget it. An essay upon truth by the boy O.M., member of the Order of the AVAV. To the first paragraph of Ascension Day, dearly beloved brethren. It is written as a fingerpost, and worthy is it to be graven with a needle upon the eye corners, so that whoso would be warned should be warned. What is truth? Said jesting Pilate. But Crowley waits for an answer. He did more than wait. He took active measures to discover, and though an answer in the key of affirmation would, in its very exordium, beggar human language, yet we may do a certain amount to destroy some of the minor fallacies that obscure the vision of our weaker brethren, not, alas, veiling their eyes from truth, but from the views in this essay have been deliberately left as they were originally written on 18th December 1906 by Aleister Crowley. The discussion which follows represents with great essential fidelity the actual argument which was held after its perusal on Christmas Day. The stage directions in the essay represent the facts. Perception of the great falsehood. Just as in chemistry, the schoolboy blunders over the law of combining weights and finds difficulty in accepting it, only to discover that the real difficulty of the chemist is that the law is 0 pounds sterling. Just as the golfer painfully corrects his pull and his slice, only to learn that the pull and the slice are the master strokes of the game, just as the brilliant and studious person arrives at the summit of his academic career, only to discover, if he has sufficient wit left over from the process, that the qualities required for in success life are a set different from, and even incompatible with, those which gave him his fellowship. So also we may help those weaker brethren who animadvert scornfully upon the circumstance that a poet, a philosopher, an adept, an emancipated man of any sort, rarely speaks the truth in the sense that the witness in a divorce case is expected to, by indicating to them the true nature of those sparks of light shaken off from the invisible crown of glory, sparks which they have mistaken for corpse lights or marsh vapors surrounding. They think it an inexplicable paradox, one who in all other respects is so high and pure a being. The first point is, it takes two to make a lie. A says to B, G, I empty all the water from the bottle and tells the truth. Student C says the same words to Professor D and lies, the bottle and its contents being the same in each case. Highbones laughs contemptuously and T's frowned at, because B wants a drink and Professor D a bottle free from moisture. This is a malicious lie if student C is trying to excuse his slackness, and the accident of his having truly emptied the bottle would not absolve him. This is confusion of the matter of speech. Bones opens his mouth and shuts it again with a severe effort. E says to F, John the Baptist had red hair, and lies whether in point of fact his hair was red or not, because he has no just ground for saying so. Confusion of the modality of assertion. when the auditor is in an inferior position as to knowledge. This ranks as a malicious lie. Mrs. G says to Father H. in the confessional, I have not flirted with Mr. R, and lies because on the theory, Father H has a right to know. Y bones these 70s is flirted. Otras temps, otras moss. You're improving, Freder, Rita replies. Pig, but she says the same words with truth to Mrs. J, who is merely asking out of curiosity. For if she changes the subject or is rude, it is tantamount to a confession, and Mrs. J has no right to trick or force one from her. This is called keeping the vow of secrecy which one has sworn to one's own soul. Albones protests violently, and is reminded that disgusting follows, never interrupts the Papfer. But why insist? The so-called casuists of the Christian Church have exhaustively investigated this subject, and all they say is nonetheless true, because subtle or immoral, as the stupid and the Puritan pretend. Cardinal, it is Newman may have had his faults, but he is at least a pleasant contrast to Gladstone and Kensit. If my truth is not the truth of the divorce court, it is because my world, thank God, is not the divorce court. I prefer Christ to Sir Gorell Barnes as an authority on the seventh commandment, and the spiritual interpretation of facts is the formula solve of the theurgic alchemist. What is a poet? What are his powers? He can watch from dawn to gloom the lake-reflected sun illume the yellow bees and the ivy bloom, nor heed nor see what things they be. Let Mr. Straightforward and Mr. Veracity and Mr. Scorn to Tell Ailey and Mr. George Washington Redivivus reflect that there are people in the world with sensoria cited to a different range from themselves. There is such a thing as a point of view. The kingdom of heaven is like unto the man in the moon, who stood on the shores of Lake Copernicus and said, What a beautiful earthrise! How wonderful are the dark shadows on yon silver globe! They are it's like a hare, like a dog, like a bally great rabbit with tail in its mouth. One would say a young virgin in pink sandals with her hair in curl papers. For the man in the moon has read Metterlink and the divine Oscar. The angel replied, O man in the moon, this is an error which is spoken concerning silver globes, hares, dogs, rabbits, virgins, pink slippers, and the ubiquitous products of the immortal hind. Let us examine more closely. Tucking forthwith the man under his wing, the angel flew incontinently earthward. The globe is bigger than I thought, said the man. Curious illusion. It is a concave bowl of blue, said the man. Nay! But it is a vast plain, and there go the ships. No doubt, were it only August, I should see that great Leviathan, whom thou, addressing the Almighty, hast made to play therein, but the silly season is long past, and he cursed it for a barren ocean. Luckily, he was not Christ, or Mr. Swinburne would have found it difficult to find similes for everything he writes about, from Blake and Byron to Dekker, Dickens, Dionysius, Dio Chrysostom, and Diogenes. Then said the man, It is not blue but gray. It is far resounding, and makes an anarrhythmical gelism. It is salt. It is wet. It is a generator of ozone, or my olfactory organs are deceived. And oh, but my bowels are stirred within me, like the young lady in the Song of Solomon, when the young gentleman, Hush, said the angel. This is delusion. Examine more closely. It is a universe of living things, exclaimed the man, for it was Thames water that he examined through the angel's 90 HP Mercedes pocket. And oh, if God thought that they were very good, what peculiar tastes he must have. Look more closely, said the angel, handing him a pair of spectacles from the firm of Kelvin, Boscovich, Son, and Haeckel. Nothing is now visible, said the man, but a purely geometrical conception of the mind, and a self-contradictory one at that. Go back to the moon, said the angel, throwing him thither with the supple yet powerful jerk which had won him the cricket ball event in the Celestial University athletics, and entitled him to wear a dark blue ribbon round his crown, for G as above. So beneath Oxford produces angels, and Sinides, Cambridge only men. Go back to the moon, and mind, woe travelers' tales. This question of the point of view leads us naturally to a consideration of the speech of those for whom the mastery of samadhi has radically changed the aspect of the universe. How shall a god answer a man? Frater Neophyte K. Asks our SH Frater L 8 degrees equals 3 degrees. Are there such things as elemental spirits in the scientific sense? Now Frater L knows that there are, just as Professor Ray Lancaster would assure a Hottentot of the reality of microscopic objects. But he also knows that there are none, seeing that all is but an illusory veil of the indicible arcanum in the adytum of God-nourished silence. Frater L will therefore reply, yes, if he thinks Frater K in danger of skepticism. He will reply no if he thinks Frater K is a curiosity. In neither case will he consider the fact of the question, unless, with a secret smile, he for his own sake wishes to affirm the illusion of all thoughts. In this event, he is really nearer untruthfulness than otherwise, even though his answer chants fact. To coincide with this is called perception of the illusion of the opposition of contraries. Again, Professor M.A. will reply truthfully to his disciple N.A.'s question, Master, are you hungry? I do not know, or cast gloom over Xenophons at Adadaka Zeroaxaka with dollar Avrequidale. Avrecua, or even Coab Gizeropa, Cox BP Ninin Zeropa, because he is skeptical of the instrument of knowledge. But he would lie in saying the same words, taking the second instance, to a common soldier of the 10-0 who did not know who he was, but took him for a person acquainted with the locality. He would not, however, care an obolus whether he was lying or not, unless he happened to be making experiments involving the subject. What he would care about was whether or no his answer showed that he was thinking as a skeptical philosopher. If so, good. This brings us, how subtly, to a statement which I do not wish to support by proofs. I imagine that he who is able to receive it will receive it. This is truth, that one should be concerned with one's own business, and with nothing else whatever. If I enter thy laboratory, O fellow of the Institute of Chemistry, who protestest that thou dost aspire to the great white brotherhood, and demand of thee, what art thou doing, wilt thou reply, I am extracting the enzymes from this ferment, or rather, I am aspiring to the great white brotherhood. And if that question puzzle thee, as well it may, seeing that either answer is in some sense or other a lie, then see to it, say that thou lie not to the Holy Ghost. Shakespeare is perhaps thought by some, may have written the lines, it be credited, to thine own self be true, and it will follow as the night the day thou canst not then be false to any man. It is a worthy aphorism. Let the consciousness be ever directed towards the self, by whatever name to all eternity, and the I call thee, thou art nameless possibility of lying is avoided. For one speaketh not, nor if one spake is there any to hear. Know that the greater, the adept, the more truthful, should he in error speak, the more must he appear a liar to those of his fellows who hear his voice. For he speaks, as beholding the face of God. They hear as idols the work of men's hands that have ears and hear not, neither have they any understanding. Therefore have the chance words of adepts been ill heard through the ages. Therefore has the world run red with blood, because the adept have spoken truth, and the falsehood thereof hath rung its sepulchral summons down the halls that men call time. E. Bones, 20,202, over. Mrs. Bones strokes his marble brow. It now hath occurred that some of the younger adepts, the light-hearted and foolish of the great white brotherhood, those who slip back oftenest to normal consciousness of the universe, so that even their pure wings are soiled in the mire of sense, perception, reason, and their foul kind, some of those boys, I say, forget the writing on the outer veil of the indicible arcanum, that rune which no is written. Separate existence in golden letters on the silver of the veil, just as within is written no existence in silver letters upon the gold. Ye bones will seem the way to destroy the argument of the paper. That rune these boys forget, miserable ones, therefore are lost in the unthinkable depths of their depravity. Do they dream evil dreams called G others, fellow men? And the like. Fellow men is really a nightmare so appalling that only the past men of the GWB ever dream it, since it implies the ghastly and horrible phantasm of mankind. In now, their better selves is a certain force whose troubled reflection is called love. This tinctures the dream, and they instantly feel compassion for the others, who, being merely unpurified parts of their consciousness, simply need annihilating, and set to work, if you please, to redeem these others, to initiate these fellow men, to emancipate these separate beings. Bones, and she hastily prepares more coffee. Therefore they determine to announce truth to men, that truth may make them free. It is but a step to Jonah's whale, now the process of waking from these dreams of evil, of air rising into the dawn of glory that is the true consciousness of the adept, of annihilating these disturbed phantoms, may involve some symbolic dealing with them. But I should be inclined to assert that it need never go so far as to postulate their reality, though one might possibly conceive of Z7 as credulous to that extent. One could only harm them, though, by allowing them to possess such thoughts, involving further discrimination, as the perception of the pairs of opposites as real. In fact, my thought bones may be allowed to believe that he is real, and that there is no other God but he, for such a thought is hardly an illusion, but bones must not and shall not think that there is an opposition of black and white, good and evil, truth and falsehood, of our weaker brethren, and I, alas, had relied on him as strong among the strong, recently plumed himself vastly on this perception of the illusion of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Though, why in the name of glory was he proud, considering that he had the authentic dictum, a very ticunium for referring that tree to Malkuth, the first and easiest broken of the false fires of Loki that surround the Virgin of the world? And yet a week or so passed by, and he was found carping at a question of mere verbal accuracy. A bones constant smitten protests feebly, truth and falsehood in the British time a plain man, sir. And I like a plain answer to a plain question. Sense are on the lowest grounds, but details of morality. Morality is but a branch of that tree of knowledge, and yet so far may the adept fall from his somatic consciousness that he is found with atavistic ardor recalling his father's last instructions ere he left home for school. And Talbot, mind you always tell the truth, whatever comes of it, the Talbot itself being a deliberate lie told under the sacred seal of baptism, in the silly snobbish hope of persuading strangers that his ancestors were all Talbots, and that it is but by some complication of the Azazgiwat that his surname is Stubbs, even though that is notoriously but an honest British corruption of St. Hubert. Once leave 70/70 truth, however, the mind interpret that aleph of the somatic language, and it seems there is no road back to it. Thus samadhi comes as a shock, as a negation, as a cessation, because only by destruction can one attain thereto. Samadhi is never the ideal house of cards one thinks to build, but the toppling over of such a house may mean somewhat. The toppling over of Babel by Timurah, in the mode Athbash, is Shishak Jeremiah, VT6, 620 Kethet. One cannot construct an adept, train, breed, or even imagine or create one, but by destroying all the thoughts of a man, what remains? David, we conceive, entered into no intrigues to obtain the crown of Israel. On the contrary, he slew a lion and a bear that rose up against him, and when he had further destroyed Goliath, the prophet sought him out and anointed him king over Israel. Surely who is anointed shall be crowned. Verily, but when not only Saul the usurper, but Jonathan, whom he loved more than his own soul, are dead. We do not hear of the resurrection of Jonathan. We do not read of a Jonathan memorial ward in the Jerusalem Lock Hospital. No word has come down to us through the ages of a honeycomb day of the fact that the primrose is not indigenous to Palestine. View in laughter and cheers. Jonathan was dead, and David probably let the dead bury him. Come thou and follow me, adds Christ to a similar exhortation, and while we pass with a pitying smile over the antithesis, or allow that is but a talking down to the level of his hearer, we must adoringly recognize the one-pointedness of the command. Let everything die and stay dead. Let there be one thing, which is no thing. Enough, such is the foolish attempt of the boy O.M. to instruct the adults with whom he is thrown by the force of the great falsehood. Let him become as a little child. Babel, correctly spelt 5 and 3 and 3, 36, 666 TN, lion 216 equals 6666, and 443, short by unity of 444. The divine tetragrammaton, U7 thou Kether, the top point of the UAA for 444 to 4 pounds, Onyx 11, which is 50-1, the type of letters. So that Goliath is all that which is not Kether, and must be destroyed. He has sought to write truth. Is any ready to receive it? Will he not be misunderstood? Will not one pseudo fools cry, Casuists and their twin brethren exclaim, Here indeed at last shine wisdom and virtue and multiscient truth. No, for the essay and the hearer, what are they but dog-faced demons that manifest no sign of truth, but seduce ever from the sacred mysteries? Affirm their identity with the one that is none, or destroy them. These are the two aspects of the supreme ritual, and these two are one, which is none. Thus far, the authentic voice of O.M. Respectful silence, the chair. Now, Mr. Bones, with the accent on the now, we shall be glad to hear any remarks you may have to make. Mr. Bones, we have all listened, I am sure, with great attention to Mr. Bowley's valuable paper. At this late hour, however, it would ill become me, it would little accord with the disposition of this meeting, were I to eat ya for vos chi cut the cackle man, and come the osses, I am sure our greatly honored Froder Dievose. Do I speak up? Oh, nay, thunder in your ears. It's a fine paper, but it's all R.O.T. Trismus what's outside. Begin the hymn. In the hospital bed she lay rotting away, rotting all eye sortie of Mrs. Bones pound ode disperse them. What I principally wish to point out is this element of contradiction in the valuable paper, to which we have all, I am sure, listened with remarkable pleasure. Eos Chuck Tet, was I called upon, or were you? The chairman. Order. If you please, greatly honored Fratchers. Mr. Bones has the floor. A voice. What will Mrs. Bones say to that? The chairman. Sternly, if I have any more unseemly interruptions of this kind, I shall clear the court. Mr. Bones. Thank you, sir. The very valuable paper to which I am sure the chairman. All those below the grade of lords of the absence of paths and the abyss of the great gulf fixed will kindly leave the court. Bones and Bowley's souls. Bowley, your method of keeping silence is a good one. Dialogue is the best form after all. But hush, who comes? Enter the Yonley Yates with druid apple blossom in his hair, and the druid casting net of the stars in one hand. Does his turn and exit, Bones, to continue true, and saying, True, let us discuss truth. In the lower worlds, where are we? Take this frivolous Mrs. I. Why does she elude Mrs. J? From fear, Bale, fear is failure. Bones, more G.H. Brighter. It is the forerunner of failure. Bowley, one certainly recommend people to be without fear. Bones, the more so that in the heart of the coward virtue abideth not. Bowley, pass thou on, Bones. One take in my hand page 39 of your able monographs, and follow my guide Axiochursos. The second of the Samothracian Caballeri, veiled to the portal, on whose is written, No separate existence, if I assert my own point of view. I deny the unity, but hush! Who comes here? Enter Whitehead, equilibrist as his turn makes a long nose, and exec. Bowley, read what you said just now. You can't play a kether down in Malkuth. Bones, one scorned the remark. Wait. By answering the fool according to his folly, Bowley, you degrade yourself to his level. But hush, who comes here? Enter Noga, my little bit of sweet stuff. She exhibits her external splendor and internal corruption. Exit, Bones. As to levels, though, all levels are one. If I cancel out a A and A, the result is the same concern to cancel, as if I cancel Ruo and 1,000 da. I'm only Bowley. All right, my gay 10-1. In Kether, it's all very well. In the Roach, one must do as the Ruach does. Mrs. Bones, without screaming, my spoon, my silver spoons. Where are my spoons? Bones. Then what becomes of our great work? Bowley. Ignore the fool, and his silly questions is as good a formula as yours. But hush, who comes here? Enter the mysterious Mathers, but failing to borrow the necessary properties, T.S. unable to give his performance and exit Bones. This action does interrupt the dialogue. Bowley Godo, do you think I've studied British drama for years for naught? Votes without complaining of material loss. Bowley. As I was saying, I would rather destroy the fool by ignoring him and his silly questions. But hush! Who comes here? Enter Nehushtan and performs serpentine dance. Exit Bones. In answer to your last remark, you and I are near enough to the halls of the Great Order to know how secret is the Brotherhood. What if your fool with his silly question should be a master of the temple talking to you in Semitic language? Bowley. My dear man, I will destroy him as soon as the rest. 68 p.m. is my reply to Bina as well as to Jessa. But hush, who comes here? Enter Shaddai sings his songs and exit. Anyway, all this is a silly bit of morality. It arose from my trying to save my wife pain by concealing from her the fact that she was not in the grand phrase of Emerson Bones. Washington Irving, I think Bowley Oyster in this stew Bones. Who told you, supreme magus of our ancient order, view with profound sarcasm to go about saving people pain, Bowley? I give in. But really I tell you that you will never attain to the brotherhood until you have genuinely conquered the illusion of the pairs of opposites. Truthfulness and lying are just as much opposites as white and black, good and evil bones. One sometimes doubt if any of these are opposites time you run up together. Look down the tree and see what truth at all. Next looks like from there. Take the case of heat and cold. At one time, the typical opposites. Nowadays, we conceive of a hot body as one in violent internal motion, a cold body as in moderate motion. Bowley, fast and slow. Bones, or even to allow the enemy every advantage, let us say. Zero and unity are not opposites. Bowley, yeah, in another sense, as the two things are opposites. Bones. That is in Kether again. If you wish to cancel a number, however, zero is no use to you. Minus quantity, Bowley. Which, you are no doubt going to say, demands a geometrical interpretation, and a very conventional one that. At Bones, yes, even the root can in a sense get rid of the opposites. How much more then when we observe the matter from the point of view of Samadhi? It needs little creative genius to introduce dexterously the various members of Dr. Waistcoat's troupe. I therefore leave the rest of it to stage managers to arrange as they will, Bowley. Then what is the converse of truth? Bones, my dear pilot, it certainly is not falsehood. A crooked line is not the contradictory of a straight one. Curves and corners alike exclude the straight line, and Bowley, no proposition can possibly have logical contradictories. Bones, there I pass. Bowley Keynes, loans. One should certainly have brought it in justifiable homicide, had the remark been Abel's. Bowley, our old friendship, Bones. All very well. You know I should never have made such a remark in real life, and it's damn bad form to give it me in a dialogue where I can't help myself. But I have to say exactly what you like. Bowley, oh come, I've given you all the best speeches. The Lord hath given. Look out. Bones, one trust to your honor. Where were we? Anyway, I tell you this. It's a ripping good formula as such, Bowley. Now we come down to the black magician and his circle again. All right, I am with you. You can never help suspecting you of morality, though. You're a devilish deep Johnny, but the atavism comes through. As long as you wear a tie that the Neanderthal caveman would have discarded out of date. I can never quite class you with this century. Bones. Before Abraham was I am. Bowley, taking no notice, I call it Christian tie. Faith in your wife's affection surviving it. Charity, which is not ashamed. Hope no. Only hope, brothers. Bones. This is in some ways a digression. Bowley, one can prove Bones. One know you can. Bowley. Well, about truth. Surely I am right in saying that one don't know and keeping silence, both subjective formulas, are equal in value to yours of telling truth to a man in the sense he understands. Bones. Yes, I may grant so much, but my formula is a good one too. Bowley, I promise to it. Try Bones. You have two advantages. One is the common or garden magic. You acquire the habit of telling truth in the low material objective sense. And nature is bound, as Levi says, to accommodate herself to the statement of the magician. Thus one may take hold of a hot iron or coal, saying it does not hurt, and it doesn't, Bowley. One have tried that. But I thought it a question of courage and will. The Hindus have a game they call the act of truth. I remember one time King Brahmadatta or some ass wanted to cross the Ganges with his army, and like a fool hadn't brought pontoons. So he damned around for a hell of a time like a cat when you pepper her nose. And by up comes cheap Boyle. I won't say it, but a lady of no reputation and says, by gosh, King, why don't we go and give Longer Bishma and that crowd Johnny up the orchard? All right, Saucy, says Brahmadatta. How are we going to cross the blooming ditch? Keep your hair on, old cock, chirps the darling of India's teeming but unsaved population. Step aside, I mow, and let the dauntless daisy of the Deccan drains perform. See here, boys, I'm what a up flapper grows to be if she's good. And I've been a real goody one and always given every son of a what's tut tut. This story is a very difficult story to tell. Flirted with me as dollars worth, and Lord knows how many cents change, not to mention a rare lot of things which I will not specify thrown in. Anyone in this army who denies this can come around any time and get square free of charge. So the river rolled back, and Brahmadatta walked across and gave long-armed Bhishma the to-go touch and wiped the maiden with Brahbhima. And biffed greatly honored Froder Dhritarashtra in the eye, and mopped up old man Saraswati, and clave Sir Gianakasha from the nave to the chaps, and generally made a grand slam in swords. Anyone but a benighted Hindu would have declared hearts and sent the girl across on a raft. Bones, one don't see it quite, Bowley. Nor do I. It's the story, though. Bones, I suppose devotion to one's profession is a form of truth. But even if, as you say, it is often a question of courage and will, these are the very qualities which this truth-telling stimulates. It's a VC touch to reply to a lady who asks how her hat suits not at all, Bowley. It seems to me mere boorishness. Bones, no, the lady is none the worse for the stab to her silly vanity. And though she may be angry in your favor when anything serious turns up, sulky she will remember it, Bowley. You devil, you devil. You Machiavellian satyr. On my word, sir, words fail me. Bones, one thing more. It's the first truth that's difficult to tell. The habit is easily acquired. Bowley, you know what an expert liar I've always been. You know my capacity for making a full and true confession of countless crimes without enlightening a soul. You know my shameless maxim, tell the truth, but lead so improbable a life that the truth will never be believed. To try your formula, I must control not only my words, but my tones, the shape of my mouth, the mirth of my eyes, the ready ambiguity of my shoulders. Bones! A good exercise, Frater. Bowley, another point. I am, after all, a poet. That's right about the lake-reflected sun illuminating the blooming bees. I often hold long conversations with people and discover long after that 7 wasn't there at all. I often dream and am honestly puzzled whether the events of it have or have not happened. Bones, consciously refuse to admit that your sensorium is not another's, that is all. About my second advantage, brother. What is a black magician, Bowley? A bold bad man, brother. Bones, what does he do, brother? Bowley. He buys eggs without haggling, and the horns of a goat come guo, and parasite skulls and wands, and unsanitary daggers, towels, and bones. Then what does he do, brother? Bowley, he gets a beautiful big circle, Bones. When a voice of thunder, stop! Do not parody the most formidable words that agony ever wrung from the lips of initiation. He works in a circle, brother, he says. I am inside, and you can get at me. He says 1 and 1 are 2, Bowley. The blaspheming Jew, I want his liver bones for your own cauldron, debauched child of Belial, that you are. Bowley, 1C. When you are up in 10 equals 1 or thereabouts and see that dog-faced demons are only illusions with the rest of Maya, there is no sense in keeping them out. Once you realize the universe has infinite LVX, why to hell with the circle, let it rush in. Bones, good boy. Bowley? Very good. We are agreed. But the trouble is that you seem to me to rush up together for an attitude and then bring it down to Malkuth. You take the Virgin of the world and swear she has a venerable beard with 13 fountains of magnificent oil running down it. All being one, why not brush your hair with a pitchfork, Bones? Yes, a very difficult matter to deal with in speech. In practice, there is never any doubt or hesitation. What I say about Kether is of course not true. I cannot even know the truth unless I am actually 74 Kether. If I describe Samadhi, I fail. You understand enough, maybe, to feel sure that I was there, but how is an outsider to judge? Bowley. True Buddha, Christ, Muhammad, all try to describe it how great is the contradiction of their teaching. Bones, especially as interpreted by followers absolutely wallowing in Ruach, Bowley. Shall we leave it at that? That Bones finds objective truth away up the tree, and a fruit in the topmost bough. Bones, one positive than that. Less Zoroaster and more Pirho, please Lord, for brother Bones. Else you will fall into the way of Paul and perish in the gainsaying of Mohammed, Bones. You are obstinate about the necessity of scorning the objective results of illumination. But let us consider the perfect man, Bowley. Oh, brother, this is Folsom, Bones' ass. He lives, it is true, in Kether. But his mind and body, perfect though they are, work as it were automatically in their own plane. At present, I am quite unconscious of my heart beating. It is not even an illusion, yet it maintains its just relation to the other illusory things. So no doubt an adept is quite unconscious of the acts and thoughts performed by him. Acts and thoughts which seem to imply conscious volition. What about your poetry, Bo? Certainly, I am never very seldom aware of what I am going to write and have written. I know, for example, roughly, that we have been talking about truth tonight. But heaven help me if I should try to reproduce the arguments or apportion the speeches. A great deal of my verse is the mere reflection of my rapture, a rapture maybe of dissimilar nature. I fall in love and write on the God-eater, see siddle to pedal, and out comes night in the valley, what he poured in at the mouth. Oh, the mill is a 33rd sonata, fancy now, comes from the hopper as brand new sludge, naught else. The shaker's hymn in G with a natural F for the stars and stripes set to consecutive fourths. I am not a poet, yeah, I'm a typewriter. A very complex machine and one capable of self, adjustment and improvement, but I can't dictate as much as letter. The machine needs the operator before a single key can be a business struck. If Bali goes mad, the quartos have matter or dies. Our superlatively honored Froder so-and-so has lost his machine and must find another, and that's the view from Baina, but the view from Cheesed is let me keep this machine in perfect order in case our S.H. Froder wants to dictate. Bones. Just so, and if Brother Bowley goes on lying, our S.H. Froder will one day strike the key and find a beat on the paper, then he will probably say, damn the machine, and do it, Bowley. We are leaving exactitude and wallowing in analogy. We have run up and down the till plains. We are less like exempt adepti than monkeys on sticks. We bones. We had better go to bed. Yen Tao. A political essay, NP or K, the synagogue of Satan, or my object all sublime I shall achieve in time, to make the punishment fit the crime. The punishment fit the crime. W.S. Gilbert. T4DII. The decay of manners. Ince nobody can have the presumption to doubt the demonstration of St. Thomas Aquinas, that this world is the best of all possible worlds. It follows that the imperfect condition of things, which I am about to describe, can only obtain in some other universe. Probably the whole affair is but the figment of my diseased imagination. Yet if this be so, how can we reconcile disease with perfection? Clearly there is something wrong here. The apparent syllogism turns out on examination to be an enthymeme with a suppressed and impossible major. There is no progression on these lines, and what I foolishly mistook for a nice easy way, the blindest of blind alleys. To glide into my story proves but 56 Konx unpacks. We must begin, therefore, by the simple and austere process of beginning. The condition of Japan was at this time, what time? Here we are in trouble with the historian at once. But let me say that I will have no interference with my story on the part of all these dull, sensible people. I am going straight on, and if the reviews are unfavorable, one has always the resource of suicide, dangerously unstable. The warrior aristocracy of the upper house had been so diluted with successful cheesemongers that adulteration had become a virtue as highly profitable as adultery. In the lower house, brains were still esteemed, but they had been interpreted as the knack of passing examinations. The recent extension of the franchise to women had rendered the Yoshiwara the most formidable of the political organizations, while the physique of the nation had been seriously impaired by the results of a law which, by assuring them in case of injury or illness of a lifelong competence in idleness which they could never have obtained otherwise by the most laborious toil, encouraged all workers to be utterly careless of their health. The training of servants indeed at this time consisted solely of careful practical instruction in the art of failing downstairs, and the richest man in the country was an ex-butler who, by breaking his leg on no less than 38 occasions, had acquired a pension which put that of a field marshal altogether into the shade. As yet, however, the country was not irretrievably doomed. A system of intrigue and blackmail, elaborated by the governing classes to the highest degree of efficiency, acted as a powerful counterpoint. In theory, all were equal. In practice, the permanent officials, the real rulers of the country, were a distinguished and trustworthy body of men. Their interest was to govern well, for any civil or foreign disturbance would undoubtedly have fanned the sparks of discontent into the roaring flame of revolution. And discontent there was. The unsuccessful cheesemongers were. Chapter 4. Tien Tao, or the Synagogue of Satan, very bitter against the upper house, and those who had failed in examinations wrote appalling diatribes against the folly of the educational system. The trouble was that they were right. The government was well enough, in fact, but in theory had hardly a leg to stand on. In view of the growing clamor, the official classes were perturbed, for many of their number were intelligent enough to see that a thoroughly irrational system, however well it may work in practice, cannot forever be maintained against the attacks of those who, though they may be secretly stigmatized as doctrinaires, can bring forward unanswerable arguments. The people had power, but not reason, so were amenable to the fallacies which they mistook for reason, and not to the power which they would have imagined to be tyranny. An intelligent Tuzaz is docile, an educated Canazel expects everything to be logical. The mob could understand the superficial resemblance of babies. They could not be got to understand that the circumstances of education and environment made but a small portion of the equipment of a conscious being. The brutal and truthful "you cannot make a silk purse out of a sow's ear" had been forgotten for the smooth and plausible fallacies of such writers as Kiara Adid. So serious had the situation become, indeed, that the governing classes had abandoned all dogmas of divine right and the like as untenable. The theory of heredity had broken down, and the ennoblement of the cheesemongers not only false, but ridiculous. We consequently find them engaged in the fatuous task of defending the anomalies which disgusted the nation by a campaign of glaring and venal sophistries. These deceived nobody and only inspired the contempt, which might have been harmless, with a hate which threatened to engulf the community in an abyss of the most formidable convulsions. Such was the razor edge upon which the unsteady feet of the Republic strode when, a few years before the date of my visit, the philosopher Qua landed at Nagasaki after an exhilarating swim from the mainland. DJ Thuriel, stranding alone, Qua, when he crossed the Yellow Sea, of the full age 30 was of 2 years. The 20 previous equinoxes had passed over his head as he wandered, sole human tenant, among the colossal yet ignoble ruins of Wai. His only companions were the lion and the lizard, who frequented the crumbling remains of the officers' quarters, while in the little cemetery the hoofs of the wild ass beat uselessly, if he wished to wake them, upon the tunes of the sportsmen that once thronged those desolate halls. During this time Qua devoted his entire attention to the pursuit of philosophy, for the vast quantities of excellent stores abandoned by the British left him no anxiety upon the score of hunger. In the first year, he disciplined and conquered his body and emotions. It's in the next 6 years he disciplined and conquered his mind and its thoughts. In the next 2 years, he had reduced the universe to the yang and the yin and their permutations in the trigrams of Fo Hai and the hexagrams of King Wu. In the last year, he abolished the yang and the yin and became united with the great Tao. All this was very satisfactory to Qua, but even his iron frame had become somewhat impaired by the unvarying diet of tin provisions, and it was perhaps only by virtue of this talisman Nahariyama, a QHEAQRAQMQA, that he succeeded in his famous attempt to outdo the feats of Captain Webb, nor was his reception less than a triumph. So athletic a nation as the Japanese still were, could not but honor so superb an achievement, though it cost them dear, inasmuch as the Navy League, to buy an astute series of political moves, compelled the party in power, trebled the navy, build a continuous line of forts around the seacoast, and expend many billions of yen upon the scientific breeding of a more voracious species of shark than had hitherto infested their shores. So they carried Qua shoulder high to the Yoshiwara, and passed him the glad hand, and called out the Indians, and annexed his personal property for relics, and otherwise followed the customs of the best New York society. While the German band accompanied the famous Karu, so to the following delightful ballad: chorus, blow the tom-tom, bang the flute, let us all be merry. I'm a party with acute chronic bearberry. One Monday I'm a skinny critter, quite foolish and ropsy. Blow the cymbal, bang the zither. Tuesday I have dropsy. Chorus. Ill. Wednesday cardiac symptoms come. Thursday diabetic. Blow the fiddle, strum the drum. Friday I'm paretic. Chorus through. If on Saturday my foes join in legion, serried, then on Sunday I suppose I'll be buried. Chorus. One need not be intimately familiar with the Jap to understand that Qua and his feet were forgotten in a very few days. But a wealthy daimyo, with a taste for observation, took it into his head to inquire of Qua for what purpose he had entered the country in so strange a manner. It will simplify matters if I reproduce ZZ extenso, the correspondence, which was carried on by telegram. 1. Who is your honorable self, and why has your excellency paid us cattle the distinguished compliment of a visit? 2. This disgusting worm is great Tao. I humbly beg of your sublime radiance to trample his slave. 3. Regret. Great Tao, unintelligible. 4. Great Tao, T-O Tao. 5. What is the great Tao? 6. The result of subtracting the universe from itself. 7. Good. But this decaying dog cannot grant your honorable excellency's sublime desire, but, on the contrary, would earnestly pray your brilliant serenity to spit upon his groveling joro. 8. Profound thought assures your beetle-headed suppliant that your glorious nobility must meet him before the controversy can be decided. Would your sublimity condescend to defile himself by entering this muck-sweeper's miserable hovel? 10. Expect leprous dragon, with berry at your high mightiness magnificent heavenly palace tomorrow, Thursday afternoon at 3 sharp. Thus met Qua, the poet-philosopher of China, and Juju, the godfather of his country. Sublime moment in eternity, to the names of Joshua and Hezekiah add that of Qua. For though he was a quarter of an hour late for the appointment, the hands went back on the dial of Juju's chronometer, so that no shadow of distrust or annoyance clouded the rapture of that supreme event. Ill. He ate, the man resting or simplicity. What, said Juju, O great Tao, do you recommend for the ills of my unhappy country? As a remedy, the sage replied as follows. Imai and magniloquent daimyo. Your aristocracy one's not an aristocracy because he is not an aristocracy. In vain you seek to alter this circumstance by paying the noxious vermin of the Daili Pai to write fatuous falsehoods maintaining that your aristocracy is an aristocracy because it is an aristocracy. Cause Heraclius overcame the antinomy of Xenophanes and Parmenides, Melissus and the Eleatic Zeno, the Eans and the non-ens by his becoming. So let me say to you, the aristocracy will be an aristocracy by becoming an aristocracy. Kiardi and his dirty-faced friends wished to level down the good practice to the bad theory. You should oppose them by leveling up the bad theory to the good practice. Your enviers boast that you are no better than they. Prove to them that they are as good as you. They speak of a nobility of fools and knaves. Show to them wise and honest men, and the socialistic ginger is no longer hot in the individualistic mouth. Jew grunted assent. He had gone almost to sleep, but Qua, absorbed in his subject, never noticed the fact. He went on with the alacrity of a steamroller and the direct and purposeful vigor of a hypnotized butterfly. Man is perfected by his identity with the great Tao. Subsidiary to this, he must have balanced perfectly the yang and the yin. Easier still is it to rule the sixfold star of intellect, while further the base, the control of the body and its emotions is the earliest step. Equilibrium is the great law, and perfect equilibrium is crowned by identity with the great Tao. He emphasized this sublime assertion by a deliberate blow upon the protruding abdomen of the worthy Juju. Pray, continue your honorable discourse, exclaimed the half-awakened daimyo. Hua went on, and I think it only fair to say that he went on for a long time. And that because you have been fool enough to read thus far, you have no excuse for being fool enough to read farther. Phenacetin is a useful drug in fever, but woe to that patient who shall imbibe it and collapse. Because calomel is a dangerous remedy in appendicitis, we do not condemn its use in simple indigestions. As above, so beneath. Said Hermes, the thrice greatest, the laws of the physical world are precisely paralleled by those of the moral and intellectual sphere. To the prostitute, I prescribe a course of training by which he shall comprehend the holiness of sex. Chastity forms part of that training, and I should hope to see her one day a happy wife and mother. To the prude equally I prescribe a course of training by which she shall comprehend the holiness of sex. Unchastity forms part of that training, and I should hope to see her one day a happy wife and mother. To the biga I commend a course of Thomas Henry Huxley, The Infidel Practical Study of Ceremonial Magic. Then when the two biga has knowledge and the infidel faith, each may follow without prejudice his natural inclination, for he will no longer plunge into his former excesses. So also she who was a prostitute from native passion may indulge with safety in the pleasure of love. She who was by nature cold may enjoy a virginity in no wise marred by her disciplinary course of unchastity. But the one will understand and love the other. She have been taxed with assaulting what is commonly known as virtue. True, I hate it, but only in the same degree as I hate what is commonly known as vice. So, it must be acknowledged that one who is but slightly unbalanced needs a milder correction than whoso is obsessed by prejudice. There are men who make a fetish of cleanliness. They shall work in a fitter's shop, and learn that dirt is the mark of honorable toil. There are those whose lives are rendered wretched by the fear of infection. They see bacteria of the deadliest sort in all things, but the actual solutions of carbolic acid and mercuric chloride, with which they hysterically combat their invisible foemen, such would I send to live in the bazaar at Delhi, where they shall haply learn that dirt makes all. Little difference after, there are slow men who need a few months' experience of the hustle of the stockyards. There are businessmen in a hurry, and they shall travel in Central Asia to acquire the art of repose. So much for the equilibrium, and for 2 months in every year each member of your governing classes shall undergo this training under skilled advice. But what of the great Tao? For 1 month in every year each of these men shall seek desperately for the stone of the philosophers. By solitude and fasting for the social and luxurious, by drunkenness and debauch for the austere, by scourging for those afraid of physical pain, by repose for the restless and toil for the idle, by bullfights for the humanitarian, and the care of little children for the callous, by rituals for the rational, and by philosophy for the credulous, shall these men, while yet unbalanced, seek to attain to unity with the great Tao. But for those whose intellect is purified and coordinated, for those whose bodies are in health, and whose passions are at once eager and controlled, it shall be lawful to choose their own way to the one goal. Fidelicet, identity with that great Tao, which is above the antithesis of yang and yin. Even Qua felt tired and applied himself to sake and soda. Refreshed, he continued, the men who are willing by this means to become the saviors of their country shall be called the synagogue of Satan, so as to keep themselves from the friendship of the fools who mistake names for things. There shall be masters of the synagogue, but they shall never seek to dominate. They shall most carefully abstain from inducing any man to seek the Tao by any other way than that of equilibrium. They shall develop individual genius without considering whether, in their opinion, its fruition will tend to the good or evil of their country or of the world. For who are they to interfere with a soul whose balance has been crowned by the most holy Tao? The masters shall be great men among men, but among great men they shall be friends. Since equilibrium will have become perfect, a greater than Napoleon shall arise, and the peaceful shall rejoice thereat, a greater than Darwin, and the minister in his pulpit give open thanks to God. The instructed infidel shall no longer sneer at the churchgoer, for he will have been compelled to go to church until he saw the good points, as well as the bad. And the instructed devotee will no longer detest the blasphemer, because he will have laughed with Ingersoll and Saladin, give the lion the heart of the lamb, and the lamb the force of the lion, and they will lie down in peace together. Qua ceased, and the heavy and regular breathing of Juju assured him that his words had not been wasted. At last that restless and harried soul had found supreme repose. Qua tapped the gong. I have achieved my task. I pray leave to retire from the presence. Beg to your excellency follow me, replied the gorgeous functionary. His lordship has commanded me to that. See, your holiness is supplied with everything that you desire. Then the sage laughed aloud. Plus 45, things to be believed. 6 months passed by, and Juju, stirring in his sleep, remembered the duties of politeness, and asked for quality "He is on your lordship's estate at Nico," the servants hastened to reply, "and he has turned the whole place completely upside down. Millions of yen have been expended monthly. He has even mortgaged this very palace in which your lordship has been asleep. A body of madmen has seized the reins of government." "The synagogue of Satan," gasped the outraged Daniel. "And you are everywhere hailed as the godfather of your country. Do not tell me that the British war has ended disastrously for us, and he called for the elaborate apparatus of harikari. On the contrary, my lord, the ridiculous Ahmad, who would never go to sea because he was afraid of being sick, although his genius for naval strategy had no equal in the 7 abysses of water. After a month as stowaway on a fishing boat, by the order of Kwa, assumed the rank of admiral of the fleet, and has inflicted a series of complete and crushing defeats upon the British admirals, who, though they had been on the water all their lives, had incomprehensibly omitted to acquire any truly accurate knowledge of the metaphysical systems of Shopi Ainur and Inai Chise. Again, Huli, the financial genius who had hitherto been practically useless to his country, on account of that ugliness and deformity which led him to shun the society of his fellows, was compelled by Kwa to exhibit himself as a freak. A fortnight of this cured him of shyness, and within 3 months he has nearly doubled the revenue and halved the taxes. Your lordship has spent millions of yen, but is today a richer man than when your excellency went to sleep." The servants then admitted that the Mikado in person had been waiting at the palace door for over 3 months, for the very purpose of begging permission to conduct him thither, but that he had been unwilling to disturb the sleep of the godfather of his country. Impossible to describe the affecting scene when these two magnanimous beings melted away, as it were, in each other's arms. Arrived at the estate of Juju at Nikko, what wonder did these worthies express to see the simple means by which Kwa had worked his miracles? In a glade of brilliant cherry and hibiscus, and any other beautiful trees you can think of, stood a plain building of stone, which after all had not cost millions of yen, but a very few thousands only. Its height was equal to its breadth, and its length was equal to the sum of these, while the sum of these 3 measurements was precisely equal to 10 times the age of Kwa in units of the span of his hand. The walls were tremendously thick, and there was only 1 door and 2 windows, all in the eye of the sunset. One cannot describe the inside of the building, because to do so would spoil all the fun for other people. It must be seen to be understood in any case, and there it stands to this day, open to anybody who is strong enough to force in the door. But when they asked for Kwa, he was not to be found. He had left trained men to carry out the discipline and the initiations, these last being the chief purpose of the building, saying that he was homesick for the lions and lizards of Wei, and that anyway he hadn't enjoyed a decent swim for far too long. There is unfortunately little room for doubt that the new and voracious species of sharks, which Japanese patriotism had spent such enormous sums in breeding, is responsible for the fact that he has never again been heard of. The Mikado wept, but, brightening up, exclaimed, "Kwa found us a confused and angry mob. He left us a diverse yet harmonious republic, while let us never forget that not only have we developed men of genius in every branch of practical life, but many among us have had our equilibrium crowned by that supreme glory of humanity, realization of our identity with the great and holy Tao, wherewith he set aside no less than 365 days in every year, and 1 extra day every 4th year as days of special rejoicing. The stone of the philosophers, which is hidden in the mountain of Abiegnes, and a certain woman cast a piece of the millstone upon a Bible edge, and all to break his skull. Whosoever shall fall upon this stone shall be broken, but upon whomsoever it shall fall, it will grind him to powder. Anon, qu'est-ce donc, en vérité, qu'est-ce? C'est le fondement de la philosophie absolue. C'est le suprême et inébranlable raison, la vie. When on this stone, mine eyes, I saw my treasure found at Ilan. Cast, O stone so red and rare and wise, O fragment of far paradise, mock it. The stone of the philosophers which is hidden in Abiegnes, the Rosicrucian mountain of initiation. O'Brien House suggests rather Hogarth. It is one of those sordid barracks where the martinet of realism society pens his privates. Whoso sees an inhabitant thereof, thenceforward forever must believe in the predestination of the damned. Are we so far progressed as to interpret the saying, the Englishman's house is his castle, in the light of the fact that once a man lay dead in his room for 7 weeks, all undisturbed? Thus far the socialist. To him enter a man, saith, the fate of men is naught. We measure mountain ranges by their peaks, not by their plains. And forthwith the man must seek in Holbein House for some crown of the age, some Venus floating new-born at Dead Sea, some god new lit upon that limbo, as also it is written. We follow him to its smallest garret, deserted by the rats, since they found nor room nor victual, but tenanted by men. Arthur Gray was a poet who had abandoned alike his father's favor and his jam factory. Caring for nothing but his books, he lived in Holbein House year in, year out. Looking at the blank wall opposite, he had seen God face to face and died. When he spoke, he was not understood, for his words were the words of a dead god. Basil Gray, his brother, had come hot foot from West Africa to see him. Basil had just made the great march from Tetuan to Lagos, and the love of his only brother burnt strong in him and the hunger for his face. Basil, looking upon the blind face of the desert, his body withered in the furnace of the sand, had seen God face to face and died. Basil spoke, therefore, as a dead God speaks, and only children understood him. At Gibraltar, on the way home, he had fallen in with Denzel Roberts, that foolish globe-trotter, secularist, and philanthropist at large. Denzel had just returned from a silly, sentimental journey through Spain, and gazing on the sunset from the western tower of the Alhambra, he had come nigh to seeing God. Saddened and sane, he yet could recognize the magnificent insanity of Basil, and had come home with him to learn the way that men call madness. To the gate, the fourth occupant of the room was Arthur's oldest friend. Nay, master! Desperate research, life risked again and again in strange ways, incomprehensible to the Swinish multitude, steady purpose ever equilibrating each thought with its opposite, had brought him at the end to the mastery of things. So earnestly would he gaze on God and die, that God had given him of his own life, and sent him among men. But men knew him not, only the babes could understand his strange grave smile. The fifth man was a classical scholar. Much learning had made him mad. Yet well as he knew Greek and Latin, he had not yet read enough to see therein the luminous image of the Creator. Last was a doctor who, gazing ever on madness, had himself become mad. He too saw God, but being already mad, died not. Men thought they understood him, and for that reviled him. Being mad, he did not care. All these men smoked heavily, and the silence of the world lay upon them. Chapter 5. The Stone of the Philosophers. It was only when the man and the socialist, invisibly seeking some pinnacle in the plains of Holbein House, as Sagiri springs from the flat table of the central province of Ceylon, came upon them, that their influence woke them into life. I will cause them to converse, said the man, who was the devil, as it were to take you upon an high mountain, and show you all the kingdoms of the earth. I have seen them, said the socialist. But, said the man, things look very different from that height. Poverty and vice are the same from any point of view, began the socialist. Listen, said the other. Arthur Gray stretched his legs, as well as the room would allow. Master, your pipe is out. Read us that yarn of your turn to with Asmodee in Scotland. If ever a place seemed to defy God, it is this. Tune our instruments, master. The big man put away his pipe. Your brother, he said, will recognize the title, and clearing his throat, he began. Or the devil's conversion I see, O nights among the winds, the devil walking widdership. As stony silent as the Sphinx, I sit upon the sandy links, and listen to the glittering spell of Asmodee, the goat of hell. He conjures up the knights of Grey and Cardinal in Dahomey, where before kings and cabasiers the flaming cat of hell careers, where witches whirl their flapping teats, still shrieking to the drum that beats its monstrous call to flesh of man hissing and bubbling in the pan. Why, is God it spelled to me? There is none other God than he. He conjures up the seas that swell before the hosts of Gabriel between the lights in ibis flight, who whirls the sword and scales of right. The tall ship strikes, The rending roar of death devours the horrid war where men dash women to the deck, leave children wailing on the wreck. Behold the lightning's jagged flash, spell out the signal with its lash. Why is God? It tore the sea. There is none other God than he. He conjures up the greasy glare of Rupert Street by Leicester Square, whose sodden slaves with sweat and paint sicken the soul and make it faint, build of the slimy scales of vice, one concentrated cockatrice. Think, laughs the devil, everywhere is Rupert Street by Leicester Square. True, I replied. It spells to me, there's none other God than he. He conjures up the loathly rout of Christians crawling in and out, a sight as lovely to the wise as maggots in a maiden's eyes. From chapel, church, and meeting room, from brothel, hospital, and tomb, from palace, gin shop, workhouse, prison, factory, slum, their slime is risen. The devil said, bestir thy wits! You ideas spew out these dysenteric of pity. Thus I cut him short. Your boyhood was so badly taught. The riddle's simple. Here's the key. There is none other God than he. He conjures up the universe, men bitter bad and women worse. The whole disgusting pan is shown, filth from the spirit to the stone. Read that, he yelled. Your eyeballs squint, but that is surely plain as print. It is, I said, for all to see there is none other God than he. And now the devil strides and spins most furiously widdershins. He causes 2 deceitful moons to dance upon the driving dunes. DFL's illusion, gentle youth, all is the enemy of truth. Where are you now, my worthy friend? I answered. Take it to the end. I do not think you prove quite that truth and lies are opposite. But upon this we can agree. There is none other God than he. He wrote in flame upon this the grass person is a perfect ass. He vanished in a cloud of musk. He sent the demons of the dusk to ramp and rage about the links to tease me. Me, the stony sphinx. I smiled. I bent them to my will. I set them dancing Diosel and singing with seraphic glee. There is none other God than he. The devil saw that he had failed. He came back very draggle-tailed and poised above me in the air. Whined, gee, Mr. Sphinx, now is it fair? My business wants to rack the bones of saints like you and Mr. Jones. I'm paid to accuse the brethren, sir. Do not blame you, Lucifer. I take my pleasure in your frown because you represent the crown, and all your prattle means to me. There is none other God than he. The devil seemed to see the point. Pleased that I did not say, Aroint. Pleased that in Asmodee I cite brave Lucifer, the Lord of Light. Pleased with my Kabbalistic pun. Really very clever one, accepted all and none, became a perfect vessel of the flame. He flapped his crooked and gloomy wing, and swore by God the Holy King, that all his malice should confine itself to this one sin of mine, and this alone, when neophytes, confused by the excess of lights, perceive not what they ought to see. There is none other God than he. Oh, how the good converted fiend worries those postulants unweaned. Though now he dances Diosel, he pounds them many a purging pill. He cleans them from their piggish food. He brings them to beatitude. Wise God, quoth Asmodee, there is none other God than he. A silence ensued. At last, from Denzel, you mean very much what the Hindus mean by their doctrine of Maya. Exactly so. But of course they cannot mean what they say. The thinkable is false. All our attempts to crystallize truth in words are just as futile as the trickery by which the artist gets his sunlight effects with some dull ochre. The impression's good enough, maybe, at a distance as an impression. Examine it close. It goes. God sees the clever composition. Man sees the untidy brushwork. So logic destroys our religions despite their truth. But, said Denzel, surely it is better to get nearer truth. I hate all the evil that religion has wrought. As I looked on Granada and its cathedral, this is what I thought. Can you blame me? And from little leathern pocketbook he began to read these lines, on a prospect of Granada Cathedral from the Alhambra brown bloated toad that squattest in the sun. Loose thankless mouth whose gree is never done. Old spider waiting with thy web aspen till all Granada thou hast gathered in. The blood of bulls and goats would satisfy of old the hellish thirst of the Most High. Well, at the worst Jehovah's altars smoked, and hiss with flesh of his own favored folk. But thou, O Christ, dost glut thy lust refined upon the ravaged souls of all mankind. An excellent photograph, said the big man. My own words just now were as strong, I think. Yet the one answer answers all, Arthur Gray broke in. You should hear the whole story, he said. Look at the inmost as well as the middle. Under correction, sir, politely to the doctor, I find that human beauty fades if we dissect the body, yet your microscopist, in the first place, will find the detail of blood beautiful, just as I its banners in my lady's face. And in the second place, does the dissection table reveal all? Is there no spirit lovely even to me, of which my lady's bones and nerves are but the weak expression? So strongly do I agree with you, returned the madman, that I have written a poem on the unattractive subject of ovariotomy. It must not shock you. I am mad, and claim the immunities of my limitations. I say nothing of your spirit theory. To me, ignorant as we all are, it seems easier to call a nerve God and so explain its functions than to imagine a God using that nerve as an instrument. We can kill a nerve. Can we then balk God of his effects? This is no less blasphemous than to say we kill God as we cut the nerve. If a man understand not his brother whom he hath seen, how shall he understand God whom he hath not seen? Materialism is fertile, though it lead to its opposite. Theism is sterile. How would you treat an engine driver who tried to make his engine go by prayer and philosophy? But I am mad. Here is my poem, then. Having the memory of a madman, he recited it by heart. Ovariotomy, I love you, lass, and you alone. What shall I say now? Death and life wrangled before the jasper throne, and cry to God to end the strife. Kind words, a little good advice, patience and fortitude and prayer. Dear chill, there'll be no parting there. Oh, bourgeoisie, you read no doubt, but still you have a lot to learn. I am a lover, not a lout. My thoughts take quite another turn. I, who have bitten through your skin, envy the surgeon who could dip his deft and conscious fingers in your bowels and twitch a scornful lip. I would have paddled and you played childlike and cloudless of your pain. I would have kissed the wound and made a pleasant ripple in your brain. Within the startling lovelier mouth, new cut my brother torch should flare and pour to its ease awful drouth the poison of a Baudelaire. Oh, fool! Not thus the intimate gives up its secret to the soul. Truth flies beyond inviolate and slips beside the glancing goal. Proves the body gains a fact, who yet leaves an equal fact behind so gathering for the cataract roll up the rapid waves of mind. Swift as the light at last, they leap of into the chasm of despair. All their freshet force they keep but froth and smoke and empty air. O fool, to deem dissection truth and paint and patches but a blind. The enthusiasm of a youth is worth the sage and cynic mind. O Buddha, couldst thou nowhere rest a pivot for the universe? Must all things be alike confessed mere changes rung upon a curse? I swear by all the bliss of blue my frine with her powder on is just as false, and just as true as your disgusting skeleton. Each to his taste. If you prefer this loathly brooding on decay, I call it growth, and lovelier than all the glamours of the day. Which of us likes his house the best? You, who find filth on every floor? I, in the privy who attest to something worthy to adore. The end is, you are always sick, you always quarrel with your meat. My raptures follow fast and thick. I even tend to overeat. You would not dally with Doreen because her fairness was to fade, because you know the things unclean that go to make a mortal maid. I, if her rotten corpse were mine, would take it as my natural food, denying all but the divine alike in evil and in good. Aspasia may skin me close, and lies load me with disease. Poor pleasures, bitter bargains those? I still despise Diogenes. Why must the prig be still the judge? The deadly Lively's audit life. Ask of the drone about the drudge. Compute the mistress by the wife. Why? Because Jesus helps them to, converted William Snubs the king. No doubt the soapy godly crew can turn their hands to anything. Gee, alas, the days of Christ are gone. The callous king supports the snub. Campasp's lips gush lethe on the schoolboy trickster in the tub. O restless rats that gnaw the bones of Aristophanes and Paul, come up to me and Mr. Jones and see the rapture of it all. This moral sense is sorry stuff. You take the peas, give me the pod, follow your fancy far enough. At last you surely come to God. Who is Mr. Jones? Asked Denzel. We have heard of him from our friend here already. Mr. Jones, said the big man, one's the unutterable Tao. Mr. Jones, said the doctor, is on this illusory plane of Maya. One of the wonders of the world. He has never seen or heard, felt or smelt, nor hath he been at any time tasted of any. Yet he is everywhere, in all, and causer of all, and apart from all. By profession he is a curator in the British Museum, but that is going very low indeed upon the plane of Maya. I have already told you, said the big man, that Mr. Jones is the unutterable Tao. Why not leave it at that? I will, said Basil, if Arthur will read us something. I know what he was leading up to when our friend played with his opponent's ball. A brother is a dreadful handicap, sighed Arthur. Still, here you are. And he read, the wife beater I bruised your body with the whip. Its wheels stand out in rigid azure. The savage blood upon your lip images hurt and hurt's erasure. The pain transmuted into passion, and passion's ruin was not pain. But my pain wears another fashion. My dead men do not rise again. You hurt me, and the silent skin whispers no word of bleeding bruises, your subtle hate, your cunning sin. Brands and corrodes me where it chooses. I fear not them that kill the body, but rather them that hurt the soul. My soul with your disdain is bloody, your stripes are none to make me whole. Could you but see my vitals torn, my nerves on rack, my tortured spirit, of all the ills to mortals born, this is the sorest to inherit. If you could see the branded token of your invisible whip, the scars of your intangible knife, the unspoken agonies, silent as the stars, then you should count the jade lines that wrinkle up my boy's blithe beauty. The judge of all the earth divines my wrongs and yours, and does his duty. For you in heaven shall bloom and burgeon, and in hell shall howl and groan. God is an unskillful surgeon, we both shall weep to be alone, for we are one and may not part. And though we hurt, we love, believe me, nor would I in my inmost heart of one of all your stabs bereave me. No man can hurt the indifferent stranger, no woman wound the casual friend. There is a glory born of danger. What anger gat desire may end? Give me the frenzy of your lip, my heart accepts your usurpature. Your body leaps beneath the whip. Our pain is in love's very nature, it is enough. The woe is over, the woe begins. The vial brims, and all the anguish of your lover and you is hidden in wrestling limbs. Drain the black cup of bruised blood. Its bitter shall beget devotion, and Bacchus sweep its frenzied flood into the Eleusinian ocean. Certainly the plane is very low indeed. We hardly came here to learn that, said Basil indignantly. We all know that cold-blooded murder even may become a duty. Witness Hodson and the pistoling of the Delay princes. His brother laughed. I don't know about duty, but to murder you in cold blood would be a pleasure, dear old chap, responded Basil with a warm pressure of the hand. Open the whiskey and you'll feel better, which being gone about, the irrepressible doctor broke in with the story of his youth. I will never assent to murder, said he. It's inartistic. I dined 40 years ago in the Apennines with an Italian prince, and he entirely converted me. I put down his words in verse. They are being published by the Society for the Abolition of Capital Punishment. If a supreme aesthete like the prince botches it, this is their idea. How much more must we detest the crude melodramas of the law? The proceeds are to be devoted to the artistic education of the common hangman as a palliative measure. Wiertz and Beardsley, Syme and O'Sullivan, suggested the scholar, separating his fingers widely to illustrate his G3s only, please, to their host. Now, doctor, said Basil, your Italian prince, the disappointed artist, shall we sit here? A lovely night. What you were saying, though, is right. Man scorns repulsion, and attraction woman is wholly reflex action. I'll tell you of a splendid joke. I had once... Have another smoke? No? Well, I wanted to determine rightly the nature of the vermin. Pity scientific study makes the hands poisonous and bloody. You see yon finger chaste and cool that moonlight flings across the pool? It seems to tempt a man to swim. I have as sharp and straight and slim a blade, whose glamour makes one reel and dazzles death upon the steel. Oh, the stiletto supple joy, as if some soft Italian boy with all his slender strength alive laughed in a deep Narcissus dive. I used to poise its light aloft above Carlotta sleepy soft. The dusky gold enamored eyes and bloom of down would harmonize. She used to scold it in pretense of envy of its excellence. We laughed, but not at the same joke. All girls are blind with their own smoke. A man may come, his lazy day, cuddle and coo an hour away. Yet in his heart is bound feel no woman's worth an inch of steel. Woman has always played the Sphinx, an open secret. How the minx covers her single aim, poor saint, with many a foxy futile feint. The same thing civilized or wild want a man. I want a child. Man has a real secret, kept close as a rosy cross adept. The safer that the sapient sheep have never guessed he'd one to keep. Unveil the pyramid of stone. He simply wants to be alone. Women suspect it. Tell one that to change her to a frenzied cat. All 'tis the one cliff where their waves break back to spumed and shattered graves. A man at heart they're well aware, may love, maybe, can never care. I bore you with an old fool's prosing? No. I was right then in supposing modern conditions hamper youths who seek to grasp these simple truths. But to my yarn. Carlotta lay so sleepy soft one summer's day that really I could not resist it. I took the dagger out and kissed it. Like a cat's tongue that daintily laps, I slipped it in between her paps. First, of course, the shrieking swerves at one's thought. It irritates the nerves, and out of tone the laughter lies at the poor innocent surprise. But soon their triumphs cool and clean the touching pathos of the scene. No word of anger, be assured. A strange soft wonder, long immured within her, lit her lovely face with something of Our Lady's grace. What did you kill me for, my lord? As if my answer must accord with some most lucid miracle of love, too sweet to think or tell. Kiss me again before I die. And as I kissed her, tenderly shone like pale flames the sudden spheres of dewy light of eager tears. She touched my soul's divinest chord. Am so happy, dear my lord. And breaking to the spirit bliss, one go, dear. Oh, so keen to kiss our baby when I get to God. Charming. Why, I'm it now. That's odd. I'm surely at my dotage it. A sniveler makes me fairly sick. Well, here's the devil in Eden still. No good we do but turns to ill. Art's but a crust or nature's chasms. Death caught her with his comic spasms. They turned her fairly inside out, jerking her legs and arms about like a damn dancing marionette. I could not light my cigarette. I started laughing. I laughed. I rocked my body fore and aft. To crown the event, I fairly yelled. Her wonder at my merriment. That beat the band. I really wonder, however I came to, by thunder. Ha, ha, you hear! It somehow jars. Bad art, my boy. The devil mars our best. You want a tender gray. Prepare your palate half the day. Take brush, and find to your surprise the snout of scarlet stab your eyes. Bad art, my boy. That's it. How smooth and clear the moonlight runs from point to hilt. Steel in the end beats silver gilt. Well, there's an end of my cigar. The girls will wonder where we are. Strange how this question of motive deceives historians and others, said the scholar. Froude was hardly a fool. But his Henry VIII is incredible. So is the conventional monster. I, for one, shall not be surprised at the day of judgment to hear that the Constantine of Protestantism was actuated by some quite simple motive like suppressed vegetarianism. Very likely it never happened at all, said Denzel thoughtfully. Nothing ever did. Look at the Christ myth, the trial and death and so on, mere stage directions from a ritual of Mithraism. But who was Mithras? Asked the big man. Like any other question, it goes on forever till you get to the big question. With your answer to it, said Dazzle. On the question of motive, though, said the doctor, I like your theory of Messalina as an ascetic, since the divine consciousness only appears as the negation of the human, and is only to be attained by wearing out all the sensation points, till no response occurs to any stimulus. Nonsense, interjected the big man. One can control them, not go Konx and Pax destroy them. Only morbid union with God is attained by fast, vigil, scourging, and the like. Morbid or no, continued the doctor, most saints have used this method. What I was about to say was that since we wish to overcome the body by fatigue, we shall do just as wisely to seek union with God in excessive debauch. If done with the same purpose and sleep successfully banished, the same result will occur. If your Messalina failed, well, what does the poet say? Try again. Read us your verses, Jack. And with a disdainful glance at his clothes, as much as to say, Where's my toga? The scholar began. The return of Messalina from the marsh of the Maremma, the malaria is drawn by the gray and chilly breezes of the autumn and the dawn. In the silence, as we shiver who is yonder, that we see with the hair fallen loose about her, with the stole about her knee. All her flesh is loose and fallen, and her eyes are wet and wild, and she staggers as she wallows like a woman big with child. How she gasps and stares about her! How she shivers! Are the hosts of her lovers there to haunt her? Life's loop and are thick with ghosts. How her teeth are clenched with horror! How her lips are curled and writhed as she staggers to the palace, weary and unsatisfied. Surely I have done the utmost, all the demon in her wails. Is it spirit that disdains me? Is it only flesh that fails? Did Danae win to slumber at the thrust of Griva's gold? Did the bull bring Pasiphae to the palace of the cold? Could the sea avail to Sappho, drifting dead upon the foam? What shall save me, Messalina? Save the majesty of Rome? Shall I wreck my life with roses? Hurt my flesh with flames and rods? All is vain, for I have conquered both the mortals and the gods. In the garden of Priapus, in the land of lost desire, I have made myself a monster and my soul a snake of fire. Oh, it stings me, oh, it poisons, all the flesh is branded through, branded with the steel of Vulcan, with the lava's deadly dew. All the kisses of the satyr, all the punishments of Pan, all Eros hath given of arrows to the eyes of maid and man. At their lips and lives I suffered, I have borne me as a queen. Hear the roar of after eons that acclaim me Messalin. Woe is me! The waves of ages, icier, icier as they roll, may not cover up my stature, may not quench this devil soul. Here's the palace, I must enter sly and secret as thief. I would rather blazon this my night beyond belief. I, a worn Siberian Venus, reeking with a fouler foam, sucked within me in the darkness the virility of Rome. Now's the light actor said. I must get me to the feast, stupefy this panic spirit, throw opposite to the beast. Hail, ye gods! Ye gods infernal! Here salutes ye Hercules. I am come to bring my spirit free of ye and forth of these. Ye am Orpheus, I will charm you. Bring Eurytus to light. Ah, my lords, alas the omen! Who shall turn me all to right? Who of all our proud Olympus shall avail me or befriend? Ah, my lords, but I am weary. See ye anyone the end? Nay, we saw her grope and stumble for the secret sidelong door, lift the latch with trembling fingers, pass within and be no more. There we stood and worshipped sadly, for the cry had touched us home, worshipped till the gray was azure as the sun rekindled Rome. You may be right, said Basil, in thinking, as you evidently do, that much of the ceremonial debauchery of the pagan worships was a mystical process. Indeed, at this day there are many cults in India, true also, I believe, in the South Seas, of what is called Vamacharya. Religious frenzy is invoked by the aid of the erotic and Bacchic frenzies. Soma, Bang, Arak, and the uniting of the lingam and the yoni. All, mind you, by a most elaborate ritual. But, on the other hand, there is perfect purity of thought in much of the avowedly phallic symbolism of the world. For just as the sexual pleasure is entirely in a class by itself among, or rather above, physical pleasures, so is samadhi union with God in a class by itself among, or rather, pleasures. Who, therefore, would make an hieroglyph of the latter formless ecstasy can do no better than by drawing physical instruments. A picture of the former, under the image of its hence, the rose and cross, sphinx and pyramid, sulphur and salt, black and white pillars of the temple, in short, all the pairs of opposites in the world. Politely to the big man. As you were saying just now, their literature, hinted the scholar. Basil took up the glove. The Eastern is such a paradox that one hates to lay down the law. A Sufi, for example, no doubt writes erotic verse for the divine reason I have stated. But also I believe him to be very glad of the excuse, because he is just as dirty-minded a beast as you and I. I suspect the semi-erotic verse more than that which is untinctured. Why conceal your meaning under a symbol, and then go on to explain it all? If language is valid, why use the symbol? If invalid, why use it at all? Thus I can't believe the Song of Solomon, unadulterated filth, with not a word about yoga, to be a purely mystic treatise. But if the writer had inserted the inane explanations, which pollute our Bibles, Christ, and the Church, and that stuff, I should certainly have thought he was trying to palm off his puerile into the guise of religion. An Oriental Kensit, cried the scholar. Just so, and the pious prurient would buy it in Taboo Dolores, added Arthur Gray. Well, judge this, concluded Basil. It's a pretty free adaptation from the Arabic, or what passes for Arabic in Morocco, he contemptuously added. And diving into his shooting jacket, he produced and read, "Inspiration, O desert, still saying, how and prone the large-eyed boy upon thy breast lies in El Maghreb, in the west, and makes his low luxurious moan. How still the stars that watch above. How still his lover lapsed for joy to death upon the dying boy, the boy dissolved and lost in love. Even as a serpent in the grass, their passion stole upon them, there within the warm ambrosial air, the intoxicating midnight mast. The pale boy lifted high the cup. The swarthy priest insanely poured that utmost unction of the Lord, that only gods might drink it up. Wherefore, indeed, the holy jinn that have embraced Ad and Islam arose from their colossal calm, and smote the paramours of sin. Shrieking they fled, and all was still. The perfume of the place was spilt, even on the domes of ivory gilt, that soar on Allah's holy hill. I saw the 80 iron kings smite thrice upon the burning throne till Mecca's black, enchanted stone resolved the rapture of their wings. The proud emirs bowed low before the awful fervor of the wind that rose their steely flight behind, and set him lion-like to roar. And as the dervish howls and whirls, its savor catches him and lifts his soul beyond the mind that drifts, into the treasure house of pearls, even to the icy solitude of death. A gust of scent is born, and herald of the awaking morn to that unhappy brotherhood, and herald of the healing kiss of maids, with eyes of white and black, whose heavenly lips shall woo them back into a bright eternal bliss. Oh, laughter of delicious boys that bring the cup and pour the wine, and with their rosy limbs entwine fresh garlands of mirific joys. The boy is prone upon the sand. He lies as one who nestles in some arbor delicate of sin, built by the everlasting hand. His lover is the open eye that kindles light within the abyss, and wakes with his immortal kiss enthusiastic energy. Weep thou again, O weeping one. Thy tears that gush within the goal are songs that shudder in the soul, springs that gladden at the sun. They flood me with irradiant tunes of life and ecstasy and light, as though some misty maid of night were girded with 1,000,000 moons. They make my pulsing blood to pour in rhythmic throbs of music rare. My songs shall course the choral air from Mazagan to Mogador, and leaping all the lesser bars, I shall become the one and all, and cry the crust-dissolving call, and lose myself among stars. "This is indeed paradox," cried the scholar. "You embolden me to read my mask of guilt. I defy the subtlest of you to find a moral or a hieroglyph in it. So, according to you, it must be the only decent poem as yet. You are itching to read it," said the big man, "for you love the bestial. We are fairly trapped. Open the window, someone, and remember that he is God alone, and that there is none other God than he," right as usual, said the scholar. "It's a true story, though, in a way. I've seen the mask myself, and I believe it. The gilt mask in Florence in the days of old. There dwelt a craftsman, pale and grim. The devil entered into him and fanned his soul with plumes of gold. He offered all he chose to ask. Watch this itching soul away, so that thou animate my clay and finish me this magic mask. The devil brought him graving tools, the first a ravening disease, the cold corrupting masterpiece of Christ, the God of weeping fools. The second, bright as burning coal, a white and wanton wolf of sin who had an icy flame within the ulcer that she called her soul. Long years he bent him to the task. He worked his torture and his lust out of the horror of the dust into the horror of the mask. The mewing, lecherous devils crept out of the strongholds of the hills and filled their blood with noisome thrills before the work of the adept. The gulls that gloat on corpses cold would gather, glutted with their meat, and to give it dead man's chops to eat, and dead man's bones rub the gold, while stinking goats and cats would come to Lincoln infamies unheard, while beat the witches oiled and furred their buttocks on the devil's drum. Yet still the dying craftsman strove to work his lust and pain within the glittering avatar of sin that seemed to mock him as he wove. At last his visage pale and grim lights with the laughter of the pit. The devil comes and praises it, and lays a wreath of fire on him. "Well hast thou wrought, O Florentine. Thy work hath gathered in its spell the daughters of the lords of hell, the goddess goats. These shall adore it age by age. To these shall it give lust and force of our spirits of remorse, and make them sage among the sage. T's eyes shall gleam when Borgia goes simpering to her stallion, her hair bedecked, her jewels on, to please her neighing, champing spouse. Key shall smile loose on Catherine wallowing in the mire of blood, her lover's cold congealing flood paying their silly hour of sin. Salamo, mated with an asp, shall shudder at its closer leering face, and kiss the gilded lips, and lace her serpent in a clasp. DT shall inspire the dews of death that stand on Brinvilliers, the smooth and strangle all her woman's ruth, envenoming the baby breath. TT shall revolve to hellish bliss the water torture and the wheel. In all their pangs she shall not feel aught but my soul-devouring kiss. Key satyr lips shall writhe in prayer to nameless Nubian horrors that mate with swinish kisses to abate the black desire of Baudelaire. So after many a house of sin it finds at last a pungent home sweet as a poisoned honeycomb, a fairer, fouler Catherine. With cooing laughter she shall press the monster to her golden teats, feed its desire on all her sweets with many a masterful caress. Key, Dias wisdom, shall invigorate her soul to heights of hideous joy, to match her with the equal boy that shall be master of her fate. She shall attain a man to excel her strong satanic womanhood. Their love shall break the mask of wood, reveal the authentic face of hell. All this the craftsman heard with pride. He called his sickness and his horror together, and his vitals tore, and rent him that he laughed and died. So with the last convulsive shred of spending life, his fingers fold so subtly on that face of gold that all its peace is perfected. Plus, 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 and there it hangs, a thought obscene, to haunt our love with damned ghosts. Hark to their execrable hosts exulting, as I kiss Katrine, it conquers. We will show it things memorial of its splendors gone, things grosser than it looked upon where Neva rolls or Tiber swings. We shall exceed its lips unclean, shall answer at the judgment day. The greatest of them all, I say, were this my poet and his queen. Ah, God, we look upon the Thames. The Arno's palaces are gone. Dull glows the misty horizon with London's stinking stratagems. But lift the lid of earth and see the good flame gush and wrap us round. For us, the gods of the profound, may England equal Italy. And I who revelled with Faustine in Rome, make madder music here, who poise upon my bleeding spear the severed kisses of Katrine. I eat her flesh, I drink her blood. God, God! Could I love a woman more by Arno's flower-enameled shore, or Father Tiber's tawny flood? And reeking with her lusty life, I hack the gilded mask and burn with joy and hate. Aha, to turn to my own guts the glutted knife, O Satan! Stand morose and cold above our bodies, swimming thus plunge thy glory into us, and fan our death with plumes of gold, and write with our blood before thee spilt on catafalque, and catacomb the dire monition of our doom, the story of the mask of guilt. The paradox used ye right, by heaven, exclaimed the big man. That poem is bad enough, but a long explanation. Use sex, use accuse. It! Better look for God in the filth itself than in the lame excuse, for I once knew people as mad as that, said the doctor. They were all right. They knew their own business, but they were misunderstood, and they're in the asylum at this minute. Misunderstanding, said the big man. Why these 7 people try to judge others? I know less of my own brain, and for sure of my brothers than I do of an oyster. Yet I try to instruct my brother and let the oyster gang his ain gait. Read that jest of yours about the Kabbalistic rabbi, said Arthur. I will. He was the dearest old man in the world, absolutely incapable of doing anything to shock the most puritanical. Yet his curious studies in the Zohar got him a reputation unfit even to speak of. He was too innocent to guess what trouble he was making. Let it be a warning to us. So he read, the rabbi misunderstood tells us, Praise to Adonai Temura Rabbi Mephibosheth ben Mordecai was wont to say that the adepti CS and DI equalize with SDI. That transcends short o' face and long nose both. This is the deepest den of the Kulefoth. Match them! The tree of life in Eden Bower grows balanced perfectly from root to flower. This may be why the Reverend Mrs. Grundy called him a sodomite the other Sunday. Good, chuckled Basil when they had done laughing. If he'd worked that out as a boy, his alleged character might have forced him to its own path. When I was in Marrakesh, they lynched a poor old man because their mosque had been defiled in some real or imaginary way. with which he had in any case nothing to do, having been paralyzed for years. The excuse was, on the soles of his feet the creases formed the word Allah, so that he always trod upon the name of God. They killed Burckhardt for that, by the way. A pure invention in both instances. I saw his feet, and they were just like anybody else, only dirtier. Poverty and paralysis were hash-juicy crimes, I warrant you, my masters. Anyway, it was a great joke, and I made a splendid Arabian tale of it. Read it, was the chorus, which he did. The mosque bewitched an aged sorcerer there dwelt within the town of Marrakesh, the fangs of hell and life, who felt twitching his soul out through the flesh. Though not originally bad, his moral ruin was complete. His pious parents said he had the devil's claw marks on his feet. An outward wart upon the nose spells inward malice in the gizzard. The path is easy, I suppose, for such an one to play the wizard. In any case, he took risk, and left off things like soap and eating, till he could give the world a bisque, 10 spells, and 30, and a beating. Well, at the age of 88, he found himself the one-horse wire for the Jahannam maiden plate, by Satan, out of lake of fire. So, calling Iblis of the Jinn, a god among the damned Gebers, he offered up a final sin to play a last joke on the neighbors. The deed was signed in fire and blood, and ere the morn was dewy wet, and Hogg for the muezzin upstood and chanted from the minaret, "There is no God, no God, ye swear. Muhammad was a charlatan, sleep is more excellent than prayer, and pork is pleasant in the pan." The elders knew that only one could crack such execrable quips. They hurried off to have the fun of slicing him in little strips. But Iblis met him with a grin worth 99% per annum. "You've missed the fun, but pray walk in. We're off this minute to Jahannam." In sooth, the fiends' unseemly mirth mocked all their wagging beards alike, as from the bowels of the earth quacked an ironical Abaik. The moral is, if all your folk are sure you are a black magician, you may as well enjoy the joke. You cannot damage your position. The moral is, when mothers crossed perform the usual Christian revel and tell their children they are lost, they simply drive them to the devil. "What's Lubbock?" asked Denzel. The pious adsum of the pilgrim when he reaches the holy ground of Mecca, so you may imagine the horror of the Muslim on hearing float cheerfully up from hell. Talking of black magic," said the big man, "the belief in it is probably as strong as ever. I myself am inclined to laugh. Who believes in black magic proves himself to be bewitched. I had a horrible case of it once. I shudder yet. I could imagine the time when my poor friend's disease was epidemic, when the panic madness seized even on the government. "I hey, my doots," said the scholar. "Popular beliefs furnish convenient stalking horses for political subterfuge," said the doctor. "Disease of the mind as well as that of the body attacks all classes, while Manas as subject to suggestion as he is. The simulation of belief is almost surrender to the belief itself." Constantine probably became a real Christian in the end. "Tell us about your friend, though, from Basel." "Itched it into verse and good," said the big man. "But as it's a tale with a moral, please imagine yourselves to be a set of children. I wrote it for them. Here goes." The suspicious earl there who saw was a poor Bedelville earl witch in every girl, a werewolf every time one smiled, a budding vampire in a child, a sorcerer in every man, a deep-laid necromantic plan in every casual word, withal cloaked in its black horrific pall, a vemjurit obscenely grim, and all designed to ruin him. He saw in every passer-by black magic, and the evil eye, interpreting the simplest act as being a satanic pact. Of course, at times there were a few and some sort victims of the crew, for when his countess coughed or sneezed, obsessed, the poor old fellow wheezed. He sought the mighty powers of good, invoked the great white brotherhood. Like smart and punctual businessmen, they sent a man round there, and then how gladly reverent doth he greet the sage's venerable feet. But in a while suspicion grows. This fellow now, by Jove, who knows? Perhaps he too one's in the plot. I like Scotch whiskey. He does not. He prefers Job to Second Kings. We disagree on many things. His nift around the adept, who lay low. He searched his luggage for his halo. He asked him frequently to dine, forgetting purposely the wine, though the arcana of Nibbana ignore the very name of Cana. He could not pass a herd of swine without a hint. In fact, in fine, he took his silence as a sign. This is an enemy of mine. To cut the story short, we skip a year or two. And in we chip, invigorated by our rest, just where the jury at the quest at the asylum duly find suicide while of unsound mind. This time we skip from earth to heaven. God stands among the spirits seven. The seven lamps about him flame. Myriad archangels cry his name. Millions of elders, prophets, preachers, saints, martyrs, virgins, hermits, teachers, angels, apostles, all singing like a lot of throstle. And everyone a Plymouth brother with praise set heaven in a whirl. Up slinks the poor Bediville Earl, save after all. The grateful tears course down his cheeks for several years. But when he pulls himself together and gets accustomed to the weather, he wants to poke his fingers in to see if God is genuine. Too soon he stripped, this cunning clod, gilt off the gingerbread of God, and sipping his Nepenthe clear, sniffed, "Bah! Plain gin and gingerbread, that night he happened to be sick. Poisoned, he yelled, with arsenic. He left. His boomerang suspicions created hosts of black magicians. By his leaky lordship, they annoyed all through the immeasurable void, until his pallid voice confessed himself in league with all the rest. The breathless children round me crowd. I pause. At last one says aloud, "Oh, tell us how he had glory." I'm very sorry, that's the story. But what's the moral? Ask a big girl with the makings of Aprid. First, golf one's long and life is fleeting. Only one bogey is worth beating. Moral the second, quiet girls. A sane squire is worth 10 mad earls. And most important, number 3, everyone must trust somebody. You do well to treat it lightly, said Basil. It's the most terrible story I ever heard. Fico, for your tragedies of blood and bones. Indeed, 'tis the one hopeless hell, had the scholar. It is true. You knew the man. I did, returned the big man. As nice a fellow as you could find in 3 continents. And lost. Oh, when will men be free of all this superstition? Groaned Denzil. Never, said the scholar. Now, said the big man. I can't see it, cried Denzil. But it shall be, it shall be. And he rolled off this great oath. I swear by all the stars that stream through all the lofty leaves of night. I swear by the tremendous towers that crown Granada's veil of flowers. I swear by their impending gleam, the Sierra's snowy swords of light, by all the cruel and cold despair that Christ hath brought upon the land, by Mary and the false, blind, beastly lies of the prudish and the priestly, by God and death and hate, I swear that man shall rise, shall understand. I swear by this my lucid eye, by all the freedom I have won, that men shall learn to love and doubt, put faith and slavery to the rout, and eagle-pinioned even as I soar to the splendor of the sun. All right, said the doctor rather testily. But you want everybody to use your methods. Hurrah for Huxley. Down with Jesus, by heaven. Your tyranny will soon be as bad as that of Rome or Geneva. Every man must find his own way to freedom. Let me read to you about my mad friends. One of the most interesting cases of symbolic coitus I know of. The man wasn't of the hunting class. He was a head waiter, child of some Russian exiles of the so-called student persuasion, and his only notions of fox hunting were taken from the Christmas numbers of the illustrated papers of his childhood. Strange how things stick. The symbolist Titan Eve was thewed and sinewed. All the blood of Mother Earth sang within her veins and gave her all the might of fall her girth. Vladimir was small and dainty, like a fairy knight, to brand greener circles with his dancing on the green enamored land. Strange that in the silent city, Eve should play the horse and mare, Eve should whinny for a stallion, snuffing up the scented air. Strange that breeched and scarlet-coated, brave with wealth of boot and spur, he should hunt the fox Jehovah through the world, astride her. But his whip, the flame that lashes blood from out her flanks afoam, strips the flesh and leaves the spirit bridle-free to gallop home. But the screams of pain that stab him, drunk with lust of spur and rod, as the rowels and the whalebone send his spirit back to God. So in madness is attainment that inspirits and endures. Who are you to blame their folly? Ask them to assent to yours. Be ye sure the eye unlighted measures by another rod. Be ye sure the human balance looks distorted to a god. To yourselves be slaves and masters, stand or fall to self alone. Human ethics will not loosen our Astartes' crimson zone. You will never fit your forehead with your father's fancy hats. You know more about salvation than the Reverend Robert Rats. Well, you have most certainly met an unpleasant set of people, exclaimed the big man. Can't we be a bit cheerful for a change? The night wears on. We must part. I think you would like my gypsy girl, said Denzel, without scruple or diffidence. If she's a sane, clean human being, we shall. So Arthur Gray voiced the general feeling. Without further debate, he set to, La Gitana, your hair was full of roses, in the dewfall as we danced, the sorceress enchanting, and the paladin entranced. In the starlight as we wove us in a web of silk and steel immemorial as the marble in the halls of Boabdil, in the pleasance of the roses, with the fountains and the yews where the snowy Sierra soothed us with the breezes and the dews. In the starlight as we trembled from a laugh to a caress, and the god came warm upon us in our pagan allegress. Was the Baile de la Bona too seductive? Did you feel through the silence and the softness of the tension of the steel? For your hair was full of roses, and my flesh was full of thorns, and the midnight came upon us worth a million crazy morns. Ah, my gypsy, my gitana, my Salia! Were you fain for the dance to turn to earnest? Oh, the sunny land of Spain! My gitana, my Salia, more delicious than a dove, with your hair aflame with roses, and your lips alight with love. Shall I see you? Shall I kiss you once again? I wander far from the sunny land of summer to the icy polar star. I shall find you, I shall have you. I am coming back again from the filth and fog to seek you in the sunny land of Spain. I shall find you, my gitana, my Salia, as of old with your hair aflame with roses, and your body gay with gold. I shall find you, I shall have you, in the summer and the south, with our passion in your body, and our love upon your mouth. With our wonder and our worship be the world aflame anew. My gitana, my Salia, I'm coming back to you. The men breathed freer. So powerfully did the song lift them that through the open window all the fragrance of Spain and its roses seemed to flow into the room. Only Arthur Gray never smiled. The big man looked at him. What is it? He said sharply. Are we all gods? Said Arthur, knowing good and evil, and that which is beyond. But I love Holbein House and London, dear vile London. What can I do? And he began mournfully to recite. The poet bury me in a nameless grave. I came from God the world to save. I brought them wisdom from above, worship and liberty and love. They slew me for I did disparage, therefore religion, law, and marriage. So be my grave without a name, that earth may swallow up my shame, Arthur, said the big man more tenderly than he had yet spoken. There was once a man like you. He wished your wish, not with tears, but with laughter. He had his wish, as you shall have yours. In spite of all, that nameless man is widely known as any in the world. They know not his name. They call him Jesus Christ. Now all the evil wrought by Jesus Christ is as nothing to the wish of that unknown poet. From this pinnacle of adeptship, we weigh the universe in other scales, but this doctrine is known to you and understood of you, and I need say no more. Then said Arthur, verily all is Maya, all, he is God, and there is none other God than he. In silence, his guests went down the narrow stairs. Arthur Gray turned him to the window and looked out on the blank wall of Holbein House. Well, said the man,